Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 500. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Hey.
This is a big episode.
Yeah,
It is.
the biggest.
Episode 500.
Yeah.
The big 500. We made it.
When you and Zach started this podcast back in 2014,
Uh-huh.
did you ever think you'd get 500 episodes in?
I didn't really think it through.
I didn't.
So-
I did not think how many episodes we would do. So, no.
So yeah, I guess technically the answer is no. We didn't think that.
Would 2014 Zach and James be surprised if 2021 Zach and James traveled back in time? Not surprised by that part, but surprised to learn that 7 years later, the podcast is still going on and you've reached 500 episodes.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised because I'm pretty sure I'll podcast till the day I die, no matter what, whether this podcast exists or not. Like, I just love podcasting. I like hanging out with people, talking, and that type of stuff. And so I'm not shocked that I am still podcasting, and I'm not shocked that the show is still going. So no. Zach, are
No.
you shocked?
No, I'm not shocked.
Kyle, are you shocked? Are you getting to something? Should we have quit a long time ago? Is that what you're insinuating?
Yeah, I'm shocked, but hey, I'm here, so let's keep going.
Are you shocked you're here on episode 500? I mean, when you started listening, did it ever go through your mind that someday you would join the podcast on a weekly basis and you'd be counting down your number 400 to your number 500 movies?
Yeah, when I sat down on episode 5, I was like, you know what? In about 6 years, I'm going to be on this podcast. I'm going to make a list of my top 500. No one's going to know 100 through 400 or 1 through 400, but they're going to know 500.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure that's exactly went through your mind.
That's the sad thing about this whole exercise is I already had a top 300 going into this.
Uh-huh.
So I had to rank another 200 movies.
Yeah.
And half of them I can't even talk about.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's double the work for half the reward.
Right. And they're not even like your top 300. There's 300 movies ahead of that 100 you're not allowed to talk about.
Right. But
Yeah.
my number 301 through 400 will always just be kind of a mystery. What are movies Kyle is mildly enthused about? You'll never know.
Sure. Whenever we finish a series like this, I normally put together a letterbox list and release it on Letterboxd. Top 100, 200, 300 as we went through the years. I'm going to do that with 500. Are you going to do that with your 500, Kyle?
Yeah, but it'll be
Okay.
1 through 500. It won't be broken out.
Right. No,
Into
I do
chunks.
that the same way as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I just re-release the list in full with 100 more added to it, basically. That way I have like kind of a definitive list of all the movies I've ranked all time. So awesome. Well, last episode was like 3 hours plus. I'm predicting this one will be close to that as well. So we probably shouldn't waste too much time. So I'll real quickly remind everybody there's a video version of this podcast, even the 3-hour ones, on YouTube. Go to YouTube, search Cinereelists, find us there, and you can watch the podcast while you listen to it. There's also a Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. Support the podcast, get extra after show audio. Lately, on the Patreon episodes, we've been going through Kyle's actual top 100. We're not fully there, but we're inching our way towards his top 50. I think we're like maybe an episode or two away from that. So go support the podcast, hear all about those great movies. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'd appreciate that. Or you can send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. We've gotten a couple emails about episode 500 and people's top 500s. We love receiving those. We will respond to them on episode 501 because There's just not enough time today. But you've got the week. If you're listening to this week after we released it, shoot us an email. Let us know what you think of our list. Send us your list. Whatever you want to send us. heyguys@cinereelists.com. And I think that's it. Let's jump into this. It's our top 401 to 450. Last week we did our top 451 to 500. You combine the two episodes, it's our top 401 to 500. No?
I believe we're starting with 451.
Today? We did that last week.
450?
What did I say? We're all confused for no reason whatsoever.
Okay.
Today, we're doing 401 to 450.
Great.
Right?
Yes.
In reverse order.
Yeah, no, I
Counting
understand.
down to
Yeah, I get it.
401. All right. we're going to get there. Why don't we go same order as last week? So me, Zach, Kyle, and we'll get this started with my episode. My number
Starting already.
450, which is a 2018 Australian drama titled The Nightingale. This is a Jennifer Kent film, director of The Babadook, which is higher on my all-time list. Don't remember exactly where it is, but the movie that I love. This is her follow-up to that movie, and it's a period piece that takes place in Australia about a woman who is wronged by some soldiers, and she's kind of like she's an Irish person in Australia, and evidently they were bullied. That's probably a soft term for what happened to them. But they were seen as lesser than, true Australians, whatever that means, really, if you're a white person in Australia. But yeah, so she's wronged, and then she goes to get revenge. And meanwhile, she meets a guy who is a true native to Australia and helps her get that revenge. And it's a revenge movie, so if you don't like scenes of violent revenge, you should probably pass on The Nightingale. But it is a great movie, great drama, good acting, solid visuals. Love it. My number 450.
Awesome. Okay. Well, my 450 is a movie that I've watched a lot in the past 3 years. And I think I watched it so many times that I decided it should be on my list. And it is the movie Babies. It's a French documentary. And I think it's really good. It's a documentary that has no talking heads or interviews whatsoever. It is just fly on the wall of different families as they're growing a baby from age 0 to 1. And it ends when they're all walking. And most wordless documentaries can't survive 50 viewings, but this one could. So I have it on my list, and I know this movie very well from watching it with my daughter.
Nice.
All right. My number 450 is a 2000 film directed by Ang Lee, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which I can see right over James's right shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. This movie is starring Chow Yun-fat, Michelle Yao, Zhang Zi, other people, these and a bunch of Chinese actors. This is an ancient story that takes place in China about warriors who are fighting, but it really is a incredible wuxia. Is that the term?
Wushu
Style martial arts movie, where there is wire work, but the wire work and the martial arts are so seamlessly integrated that it's really beautiful to watch and to look at. And there are some standout fight scenes in this movie. And I think for a lot of Americans around this time, this is their first exposure to a wushu style movie.
It was pretty darn close to my first, for sure. It was the first one that really captivated me. I feel like Crouching Tiger gets a lot of backlash too for some reason. I don't understand it. I think maybe people talked it up and then other people were like, it's over long or something like that. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I like it.
It is long, but
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people, it's something they'd never seen before.
Yeah. Maybe once the style became a little more prevalent, people were like, well, it's a good version of that, but maybe not the best version. I don't agree with that. I think Crouching Tiger is awesome, but I think maybe that's where some of the backlash stems. But my number 449 is a movie from 2013 titled The Immigrant. It's a James Gray movie. James Gray directed Lost City of Z, which I enjoy a lot, and others. It stars Marion Cotillard, Joaquin Phoenix, and Jeremy Renner. I think I discovered this movie when we did Forgotten Films of 2013, or maybe I was just searching for like films that people don't talk about or something. I don't remember. But I watched this fairly recently within the last couple of years, and I enjoyed it a lot. And it's a immigrant story, obviously, as is the title. And about a woman who comes to the United States with her sister who is sick. And when she gets here, she realizes that, set in the 20s, I think, she realizes that this is not going to be an easy place to live, New York in the 20s. And she has to do some things that you would hope people wouldn't have to do to survive. And yeah, it's just a great drama with great actors. Check it out. The Immigrant.
Awesome. Well, my number 448 is Mary, Queen of Scots.
You're 449?
Sorry, 449. Mary, Queen of Scots. Have you guys seen this?
I have not.
Yeah, it's the one with Margot Robbie and Saoirse Ronan
Yes.
that came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I just really enjoyed it. One, because I think both of those performances are so good and very different. And I love that period of history. I think it's super fascinating. And I think the cinematography, all the acting is just super intriguing to me. So I really enjoyed myself watching Mary, Queen of Scots. And it's just an interesting part of history. So that's why it's my 449.
I remember Margot Robbie's only in a handful of scenes, but she's great in them.
Yeah, it's mostly about Mary.
Yep.
And then they kind of cut into the Queen.
Yeah. It's a good pick. My number 449 is Bad Trip from 2021. I actually watched this on the airplane coming to visit you, Zach, in Orlando, and you, James, earlier
awesome.
this year. This movie is starring Eric Andre, Little Ray Howery, and Tiffany Haddish. And this is I guess you can call it a hidden camera style movie where there is a plot to the movie. It's about Eric Andre's character decides he's going to travel to New York City to profess his love to like an old crush of his. And he takes Little Ray Howery with him along the way, and he's being pursued by Tiffany Haddish. And that's the plot, but every scene is a hidden camera setup where something crazy happens and we're watching normal people reacting to what they think is a real situation. And all I'm going to say is I wasn't sure about this movie until the smoothie scene. And then that's what locked in this movie. I was like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this. Because there's a whole like scene in a smoothie shop that kind of kicks off the whole plot. And you're like, okay, this is amusing. And then there's one gag at the very end, which had me cracking up. It was so unexpected for both me and for the innocent bystanders to the situation. And
Sure.
If you like the smoothie scene, you're going to enjoy the rest of this movie as it goes.
Yeah.
Nice. My number 448 is Jordan Peele's Us, which was his follow-up to the critically acclaimed Get Out, which appears higher on my list. And I dig this movie. I probably need to rearrange where Get Out is versus Us, because in my brain, Us is actually higher than Get Out, somewhere in there. Get Out I've seen once. Us I've seen 3 or 4 times, and it definitely captivated me on release. and I enjoy the twisty story. I certainly enjoy the central performance from Lupita Nyong'o, as well as the rest of the cast, all playing like double versions of their characters. It's great and gripping. And if you don't particularly love horror movies, I think you can still watch this one. Like, it has horror elements to it. It does have scary moments, but they're more like intense moments because you like these characters, not because somebody's being tortured or something like that. So if you haven't seen Us, check it out.
Us takes a
Cool.
bigger swing than Get Out.
Mm-hmm. Although Get Out was a pretty big swing.
It was a big swing. And then for his follow-up, he's like, I can swing harder.
Us or Get Out was more of like a people might not like the content of this. You know what I mean? The execution, the style, I think was safer. Whereas Us is kind of the opposite. Like, the style and the presentation is a bigger swing. And the what am I saying? Yeah, they're like reverse. There's less political elements to, maybe not less controversial political elements in Us versus what Get Out is getting at. Zach, what's your 448?
My 448 is called Tuki Buki. It is a 1973 Senegalese drama.
Oh, sorry. I didn't laugh for that.
Tuki Buki means the journey of the hyena. And this was a film that I sought out because I wanted to watch more African cinema. And this is really good. It's fairly low budget, but it immediately invests you in these characters. Basically, the story revolves around a couple. He rides around on this motorcycle that has these big horns on the front, so it's like super noticeable. And they want to get out of Senegal. They want to go to Paris. So they like steal and hustle to get the money. And then they finally get tickets to get on a boat to go to Paris. And then he chickens out. And then she ends up leaving without him. And so it's just him dealing with the consequences of that like impulse decision to not go. And I think the movie is awesome. It's a really cool kind of look into like the 70s in Senegal. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. If you're at all curious, I would seek it out. Tuki Buki is the name. But you might look up The Journey of the Hyena if you don't know how to spell that.
My number 448 is technically a 2020 film, but I consider this 2021 just because of when we can actually see it. That is The Father. You guys remember seeing this? We still saw this year. Seems like so long ago.
Sure.
This movie is starring Anthony Hopkins, and he is playing a man who is dealing with dementia. But instead of this being a standard, I guess, the standard dementia story, is that a thing? Okay. Like, we're not seeing it from an outsider's perspective. We are seeing the movie from the perspective of him. So as his world warps and twists in his mind, we, the viewer, are seeing those same warps and twists. And it kind of puts you in the shoes of someone who is dealing with dementia. What could this possibly feel like? How could we best translate that to the audience? It's a great Anthony Hopkins performance, and you also have Olivia Colman playing his daughter.
Yeah, it's awesome. I agree. My number 447 is from 1984. It's a fantasy comedy titled All of Me, starring Steve Martin and Lily Tomlin, directed by Carl Reiner. And this movie's great. I came to it later in life, and I thought I had seen like all the Steve Martin classics, The Jerk and Three Amigos, and I don't know, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Parenthood. Like I'd seen all the good Steve Martin movies, and then I saw All of Me, and I was like, this is amazing. It's like a body possession comedy where Lily Tomlin passes away, and like her personality, her consciousness enters Steve Martin's body, but he's still in there as well. And so they're constantly fighting over what Steve Martin is doing at any one particular moment. And so there's a ton of Steve Martin doing physical comedy in this movie where he literally cannot control his appendages because Lily Tomlin, who has a different agenda, is making him grab a glass, or I'm making it sound very simple, but he ends up having to help her in order to get her out of his body. And so they start cooperating together, even though they are at odds from the beginning of the movie. So it's awesome. And if you think you've seen all the good Steve Martin movies, you haven't until you've seen All of Me. My number 447.
What year was this?
1984.
Okay. I think I've seen this on TV.
I think
It sounds
this
familiar.
was like a HBO movie that was like constantly in rotation, and I just never stopped the channel flipping to actually watch it. So I think probably other people have heard of this and it's been around, specifically people who had HBO in the 80s probably. But I missed it.
Nice. Okay, well, my next film, I lost track of the number already. 447 is Dog Day Afternoon. This is a Sidney Lumet film, and it stars Al Pacino and John Cazale. And this movie, I just, first of all, I love like bank heist movies. I think that's a fun genre. But this one is like, just one of the best of the genre because it has all the cool bank heist stuff, but also like a really interesting backstory between the guy holding up the bank, and the whole thing is it's like a drama more than a thriller. And I just really enjoy this one for sure. So, Dog Day Afternoon.
I want to find some time to like get really in a heated conversation about something, and at the peak of it, just start shouting Attica.
I think you should. You owe it to yourself.
Yeah, I got to find the right time for it, but
yeah,
we'll make it work. My number 447 is an animated film from 1998. This is The Prince of Egypt, and this is the story of Moses in animated form. It has a awesome voice cast. Val Kilmer as Moses. They have Ray Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, Martin Short, etc. It goes on from there, and it's a pretty, I think, interesting telling of the story of Moses, but it's also well animated. It's not. I think this is DreamWorks. It's not Disney, but it has sort of a Disney inspired look to it. You could tell that the animators were trying to find their own style. So it looks Disney adjacent, where it's not quite there, but it's still is kind of cool to look at. And it's definitely a movie that I would say is kid friendly, but it does go there with some of the plagues in the story. So keep that in mind. My then 5-year-old watched it and he was fine with it, but something that, you know, you're not going to be getting like the Disney version of Moses. You're getting sort of the animated biblical kid-friendly version of Prince of Egypt.
You think that's different than the reality of Moses?
Well, I've talked to you guys about the Hanna-Barbera cartoons I used to watch that were based on the Bible.
Yeah.
You have?
Maybe Zach and I have talked about this.
I don't know anything about this. I don't think.
Oh, okay. Well, when I was a kid, so in the late 80s, I had a friend who had on VHS these animated tales of the Bible done by Hanna-Barbera. And they were biblically violent is the best way to describe it.
They were accurate to the text.
Yes. So
Gotcha.
I remember like the David and Goliath one had the battle of David and Goliath, and then David hits Goliath in the head with the stone, and Goliath's skull like opens up and starts bleeding and he falls over. And this was made for kids because I think the whole idea is like there was time travelers, like kid time travelers were going back to biblical times to see the stories of the Bible.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So it's a fun little nostalgia trip. Not, I would say by today's standards, not kid appropriate, but 30 years ago, why not?
Sure. Interesting. I'll have to do a little YouTube search on that. I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah, they're out there. The Samson one's pretty good too. Zach, has your favorite part where Samson's beating up a bunch of people?
Samson's my least favorite person from the Bible.
Really? Out of all the people in the Bible, he's your least.
Out of all the heroes of the Bible.
Gotcha. All right. My number 446 is from 2019. It won Best Picture, and I enjoy it as well. It's Parasite, which is directed by Bong Joon-ho. I am pretty sure over time this will move up the list because I've seen it twice, and I feel a need to watch it again someday. You know what I mean? Not tomorrow, but someday I can see myself watching Parasite again. And I don't feel like, you lose a little bit in the second watch just because there's nothing new, but there were like so many other interesting things, not necessarily like major things that I missed, but it was easier to kind of get into the vibe of the movie without having to figure it out. And I because of that, I think it's a movie worthy of being on my list. And right now it sits at 446.
Awesome. Well, what?
Oh,
what,
sorry. I know. If I do this for every single, I won't be here forever. Didn't you guys review Parasite like 6 months before it was actually released?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember hearing like I remember listening to the Parasite episode, and I was like, okay, this is some South Korean movie I'm never gonna see. So I listened to the whole thing, and then like 6 months later it came out, and like I've heard this podcast, and all I remember is Basement. So even though I heard the spoiler version, I wasn't fully spoiled on it.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 446 is a movie that came out in 2019 called Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And this is kind of the quiet tale of a woman that does not want to get married, but her family is insisting that she get married. And the way that they did that in the 18th century for wealthy women is apparently they hire someone to paint their portrait, and then they send the portrait out and find a suitor based on the portrait. And so she doesn't want to get married, so she's been uncooperative with portrait artists in the past. And so the family hires this female portrait artist and tells her, don't tell her that you're an artist, and just hang out with her during the day as a companion, and then at night paint from memory what you remember. So that is the kind of setting up the plot. And I just found this movie rather hypnotic, and it's telling a very quiet, slow, simple story with a ton of emotional resonance for the, between the characters. And I just bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. So Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I think, is very beautiful, and it's my number 446.
Nice. My 446 is Zach's favorite movie of 2020, Black Bear.
Nice.
Yeah. This is a hard movie to describe, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But it's starring Aubrey Plaza. And at the beginning of the movie, Aubrey Plaza is invited to a cabin that's owned by a couple. And she's there as kind of like a renter to do her, I think she's a screenwriter and or some sort of storyteller. And so she needs like a quiet place to work. But she slowly starts kind of integrating herself into this couple's lives. And weird relationships get formed from there. And then the movie kind of, let's just say, goes places. It's not what you're expecting to happen, but it's a captivating movie. There's a lot of like psychological tension going on throughout the whole movie. And if you think of Aubrey Plaza as, April Ludgate from what's the show? Parks and Rec, which she's very good in that role. You can see a completely different side of her in this movie, and she shows actual range where she can play more than just, April, who seems like a version of herself.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I like that movie a lot as well. My number 445 is a 2019 dramedy titled The Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh yeah.
And it stars Shia LaBeouf, Zach Gottsagen, and Dakota Johnson, amongst others. And this movie makes me feel good. I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and there's nothing controversial or particularly flashy about it. I just enjoy all 3 of those actors being on screen together. And Shia LaBeouf, I think this is Shia LaBeouf at his most likable, even though he's playing a conflicted character. Has a decent redemption arc over the course of it. And I think Zach Sagan, like the earnestness of his performance in this movie, just absolutely sells it from one side to the other. And yeah, I think it's a rare feel good movie on my list of my top 500, and I'm fine with it, sitting at 445.
Nothing wrong with feel good movies, James.
No, they're just rare on my list.
Okay, well, my 445 is not a feel good movie. It's a weird movie. It's called Videodrome. It's a David Cronenberg film, starring James Woods. And this movie's just weird. Any Cronenberg movie is just weird. How would I describe this film? I don't know. Yeah, I cannot describe this film.
It's a movie about media consumption.
For sure. Yeah, it is a satire about media consumption, about how TVs rot our brains, all sorts of things. If you like Cronenberg, check this out. If you don't know Cronenberg, just be afraid and stay away. So
start with The Fly if you don't know Cronenberg, and work your way up to Videodrome.
Yeah, for sure. So Videodrome, my 445.
Actually, I saw Videodrome before The Fly.
And
I was scared to watch The Fly because I think I saw parts of it on TV when I was a kid, and it really creeped me out. So I had that memory of being like a 7-year-old. I was like, oh man, this movie's gonna be real scary. So I'm like, I'll do another one instead. And Videodrome's definitely the weirder of the two, and I would say the grosser of the two. Like after seeing Videodrome, The Fly was like, oh, it wasn't so bad.
The Fly would definitely be scary to a young person, but to an adult, The Fly is not scary.
No,
it's interesting. The performances are wild, and the special effects, the practical effects are fun to watch, but it's not scary for adults. But what's your 445?
My 445 is The New World, directed by Terrence Malick. This came out in 2005. I feel like this has come up a couple of times on the podcast last couple of months, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But this is Terrence Malick's take on the John Smith Pocahontas story, starring Colin Farrell and Koranka Kilcher as Pocahontas, who's never actually named, as well as Christopher Plummer's in this too. And if you like Terrence Malick and you like effective use of magic hour and sort of his meandering, dreamlike, contemplative storytelling, then this is a great way to experience a part of American history through his eyes.
I need to rewatch that one. It's been a while, but it's so long because it's a Malick movie.
Yeah.
At least the director's cut that I have is long.
Yeah, I watched. So you can only buy the director's cut now,
right?
And it's long. And I will say that the first 2 acts are almost perfect, and then the third act, where they bring in Christian Bale, that's where it drags for me.
Cool. This must be the feel good movie section of my list, because 445 was a feel good. 444 is a feel good. It's a folk movie called Midsummer from 2019. Just an awesome movie about a group of friends who attend a festival in Sweden, and absolutely nothing goes wrong. My number 444.
Watch with your family.
Leave safely.
Yeah. It's like a Christmas film.
Without the Christmas. Yeah.
I believe it's actually the exact opposite of Christmas time-wise in the year.
Sure. It's opposite Christmas Day.
It is called
basically.
Midsummer, or as we call it around this place, opposite Christmas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my number 444 is The Grand Illusion from 1937. It's a Jean Renoir film, and it surprised me. I was not expecting much from this film, and it was so enjoyable to watch. It is about French POWs in a German camp, and they just keep trying to escape. And so eventually they're sent to like a supermax POW fortress. This movie is well acted. It's funny. It's traumatic. It's so good. James, if you liked Stalag 17, I think the next one you should check out is The Grand Illusion. Yeah, it's really, really good.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good choice.
I'll add it to my watch list.
My number 444 is a Spanish film from 2016, and this is The Invisible Guest. This movie is set up like an Agatha Christie plot, where a man wakes up in a hotel room, all the doors are locked, all the windows are locked, no one can get in or out, and his lover is dead next to him. And he needs to figure out how she was killed, why she was killed, like what's going on here, because obviously he's the number one suspect, being that he's the only person in the room. And this movie has twists and turns, and it surprised me. I think this was on the IMDb top 250 for a while, which is why I checked it out. And I think it's, if you like kind of murder mystery whodunit thrillers, this is worth watching. It's in Spanish, but subtitles aren't going to kill you.
That they won't. I agree. My number 443 is a documentary titled Gleason. And this movie is great, but it is a hard watch. So just be warned, it's about an NFL player who's a young guy whose wife is pregnant when he finds out that he has Lou Gehrig disease. And he starts documenting himself because he knows what's coming and figures he will lose his ability to speak at some point. And so he starts making videotapes for his unborn child. And as he starts to lose his ability to speak, they start having people film for him. He starts talking through a machine, and it's just a brutal watch to see somebody who makes their living being very physical as a defensive back in the NFL, and just watching them deteriorate in front of your eyes. And I know that doesn't sound like a fun watch, and it's not, but I think it's an important watch if you can handle those types of things. You know what I mean? Like if that just sounds like an emotional nightmare for you, unless you're looking for that, don't watch this movie. But if you want to be put in somebody in the position, I don't know. I don't know how to describe why you would watch this, other than if you'd like to explore empathy for other people's plights. I think Gleason is an important documentation of somebody else's plight, and at times it's inspiring to see somebody going through something really tough, him and his wife going through something really tough, and how they react to that situation with grace. So that's why you should watch it for sure. My number 443.
Cool. My 443 is directed by Steven Spielberg from 1987. It's called Empire of the Sun. And I actually watched this in preparation for our ranking of Steven Spielberg's filmography. I'd never seen this before a couple of years ago. And I was surprised that, happily surprised, there's another Steven Spielberg movie that is really great. And it just is overshadowed by the other ones that are even greater. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It stars Christian Bale, very young Christian Bale, and I think John Malkovich is also in it. And it's about a boy who's in China when Japan attacks during World War II. And so he's kind of stuck in a city that is rapidly becoming very dangerous to be in. I think it's Steven Spielberg doing what he does very well. And Christian Bale's awesome. And yeah, so more kind of that POW feel. I must be in my POW section of the of the list. But yeah, I like Empire of the Sun quite a bit, and that's why it's my 443.
Quite a bit refers to a significant amount.
That it does.
Yeah.
My 443 is a 2019 film. This is Ad Astra, directed by James Gray. It is starring Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. This movie takes place in the near future, and there is a phenomenon of some sort descending on Earth. And Brad Pitt, who's an astronaut, needs to travel into the reaches of space to find his father, played by Tommy Lee Jones, who can maybe explain this odd phenomenon that's going to affect the Earth. And this is sort of a journey movie. I can equate this similar to like Apocalypse Now. And you have someone who's just going deeper and deeper up the river. In this case, that river is space. And things get weirder and weirder as they go until he eventually comes to a conclusion. So if you kind of like movies like that where things just kind of get weirder as they go, and you want to see a decent Brad Pitt performance and some good space sci-fi shots, Ad Astra's worth checking out.
Ad Astra, directed by the guy who directed The Immigrant, which I mentioned
James Gray, that's
earlier.
right.
Yeah. My number 442 is John Wick, Chapter 3 - Parabellum. the third John Wick movie, my second favorite John Wick movie. John Wick is placed higher on this list. John Wick 2 didn't make the list at all, although I do like that movie. It's just my third least favorite. Third least? Whatever. It's the one I prefer, the third in the trilogy. And it's a long action movie with tons of action. Like, there's nearly no plot in this movie, and I was fine with it. It was a fun time, and I'm looking forward to the fourth.
Cool. Well, my my number 442 is a comedy called Dumb and Dumber. And this is a movie I watched a ton in college, and I think it's very funny. And yeah, I don't know what else I have to say about it. It's the Farrelly brothers, and it stars Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels and Lauren Holly. And yeah, it's really good. Kyle, I don't think you've seen it.
Yeah, I've never heard of Dumb and Dumber. Should I see it?
Yeah.
Pretty sure you and I saw it together.
Did we?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the chances quite
maybe
strong.
Maybe it's Tommy Boy that I'm thinking of that you haven't seen.
Oh, I thought you were joking when you said I hadn't seen Dumb and Dumber.
No, I was serious. But am I thinking of Tommy Boy?
You're thinking of Tommy Boy.
Okay. Those movies are very similar to me.
Okay. Maybe
Okay.
you could have sold that to me 20 years ago. Not 25, 30.
Sure.
But
definitely
now,
not
I
plot
don't know.
wise, but just in my head, I watched both those movies a lot, and I found the sense of humor similar.
Yeah. Dumb and Dumber's pretty funny movie, if I remember correctly. All right. My number 442 is a noir film from 1946, directed by Howard Hawks, and this is The Big Sleep. And this movie is a famous noir, and it's famous for two reasons. Number one, it is the movie that Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall met on, and then started their relationship. They eventually got married and stayed married until his death in the 50s. And it is, you can see why they were a good couple, because their chemistry in this movie is amazing. And there's something magnetic about Lauren Bacall as an actress. This movie also has a nearly incomprehensible plot. Noir films are always best described by, it starts out with something simple like investigate a murder, investigate a missing person. And in this case, you've got Humphrey Bogart playing his Philip Marlowe character. And it's the best noir film is like unraveling a sweater, where you start pulling at the strand and you just keep pulling and pulling, and things get crazier and crazier. And that is The Big Sleep, where every scene, a new character is introduced, a new plot point is introduced, and then by the next scene, they've moved on from it. So if you see the movie, you can try and follow the plot, but it's not worth it because it may not even make sense. Just kind of like be absorbed by the noirness and the performances of it.
Cool. Would I like it?
I mean, how do you feel about like 1940s Philip Marlowe, Sam Spade noir?
James, you won't like it.
Zach
I guess-
says I won't like it.
I mean, these are not movies that you talk about. Like when we do top 10 last 10s, you're not jumping into like 40s and 50s style movies. So
Not often. Not on purpose, that's for sure.
James, how much did you like Inherent Vice?
Not at all.
okay, then don't.
Okay.
I mean, are there any, like, what about Double Indemnity? Do you like that?
Never seen it.
Okay. I would say if you want to see a good noir, start with Double Indemnity.
Okay.
That's a good entryway.
Sounds good. My number 441 is from 2014, How to Train Your Dragon, Part 2.
Ooh,
My
part
favorite.
2.
My favorite How to Train Your Dragon movie. And if you like Pixar movies and you're sleeping on How to Train Your Dragon because it's not one, then you, my friend, are doing the wrong thing, because How to Train Your Dragon could very easily be a Pixar film. Like it's by far one of the better of the DreamWorks movies and feels in my brain very Pixar-esque, even though it is a DreamWorks picture quadrilogy at this point. I think there was 4 of them, maybe 3. I don't remember.
There's 3.
Yeah, there's 3 theater released, and then I think maybe 1 or 2 that were direct to video. But yeah, I enjoy the How to Train Your Dragon movies, and this one ranks the highest because it doesn't have any of the baggage of having to like catch you up to speed with the characters and things like that. The new characters that it introduces all make sense as far as the plot goes, and it's a great movie. 441.
Cool. My 441 is Inside Llewyn Davis by the Coen brothers. It stars Oscar Isaac and Carey Mulligan. Also has John Goodman in it, and I just find this movie so pleasant to watch. I really enjoyed my time in the theater watching this movie. It also has surprisingly fun music in it that was unnecessary, and I enjoyed a lot. Specifically with Adam Driver and who's the
Justin Timberlake, right?
Yeah, Justin Timberlake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the Coen brothers. I like half their movies a lot, and the other half I don't like at all. So this is the one that made the good half. So Inside Llewyn Davis from 2013. That's my 441.
I did not like this movie, but I was also very sick when I saw it.
Sure. James didn't like it either.
Okay. And you felt normal when you saw it, James? You felt you were fine of health?
Physically, yes.
Okay, good. My 441 is a 1999 found footage horror film, maybe the first, if not the breakthrough, The Blair Witch Project.
Not the first, but the breakthrough.
Okay,
Sure.
I figure it's not the first, but definitely the breakthrough. This is starring 3 people you've never heard of before and have not heard of since, because they're really dead. No, they're
I've
not.
heard of the actress. She was
Heather
in
Donahue.
Steak and Shake commercials afterwards.
Oh, well, there you go. Heather Donahue, famous of Blair Witch Project and Steak and Shake.
Sure. I mean, it wasn't just one Steak and Shake commercial. She was like the spokesperson. She probably made infinitely more money making those commercials than she did Blair Witch Project.
I don't know what their contracts were, but I doubt she made a ton off of Blair Witch.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, so this is a found footage horror film about 3 amateur filmmakers who go into the woods to make a documentary about the Blair Witch, and then they get caught up in the legend themselves. At the time, this was marketed as a true story, as this is the actual footage. I mean, there's actual footage they shot, but these were not actors. These were real people who shot this footage, and stuff really happened to them. It had a very early viral internet campaign where there was a cool website you could click on, because that was a big thing, clicking on websites back in the day. I could like read all this backstory. And I remember it being, I would say, fairly scary. I've not really seen it since. At the time, you didn't know what was going to happen. It was definitely tense. I wonder if it's still scary today, based on having that distance and the fact that I've seen it before. But I have fond memories of seeing this movie.
It's a classic. Love that movie.
Endlessly parodied in the 2000s.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you know somebody who gets scared, they don't have to be scared easily, but can get scared by a movie, and you're out in the woods and you turn that movie on, it's gonna work even today, for sure, because it's a scary movie.
Yeah.
My number 440 is from 2017. The movie titled Gemini, which made my top 20 from that year. And it has grown on me ever since. I think I've seen this at least twice, maybe 3 times. It's a low-key mystery thriller about these 2 women. One is a super famous singer played by Zoe Kravitz. And the other is her assistant. And about halfway through, an inciting incident happens. And the rest of the movie is about the fallout from that incident. But it's a slow burner, and I enjoyed it a lot, and it's my number 440. You should check it out if you have not. Gemini.
Why did I think that was a Will Smith movie where he meets his younger self?
That's called Gemini Man. And that movie's awful.
The sequel.
Yeah.
Okay, my number 440 is called Boca. It is a 2017 sci-fi film. And it takes place on a couple. They're on their honeymoon in Iceland. And they wake up and there's no one else to be found, as if everyone else on Earth had just completely disappeared. And you just spend your time with them as they walk around and try to figure out what happened and try to process what happened. And one, it's in Iceland, so I think it's absolutely beautiful to look at. And it's shot in a very kind of indie way. And it's a little ambiguous at times, intentionally so. And I found that to be enigmatic in a good way. And you kind of pick sides in this movie, but it's, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It's very indie, and it doesn't necessarily end in like a satisfying way, but I was there for the journey and I liked it a lot. So Boca is my 440.
I absolutely forgot I watched that movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
My 440 is a movie we actually talked about this on this podcast a month or 2 ago, The Green Knight.
Nice.
This is starring Dev Patel, and it is the story of said Green Knight, Sir Gawain, and the quest he is set on. Sorry, he's not the Green Knight, but he is sent on a quest by the Green Knight. This is a movie that I do want to rewatch. It is a movie I have not forgotten about, but I definitely had some mixed, if not mostly positive feelings about it. And I think a second watch will cement, am I more on the mixed side, on the positive side? Because right now I'm leaning towards the positive.
Nice. My number 439 is the documentary Minding the Gap, which kind of, like, by the promotional materials, looks like a skateboarding documentary. It starts with like a guy who filmed him and his friends because they were skateboarding, and so they were making skateboarding videos. And he kind of films them in between the skateboarding as well. And then over the course of life and growing up, they still film each other, but there's less skateboarding because they're now adults, and stuff happens in the documentary, real life stuff, because it's the documentary, and it's a good movie about friendship and coming to terms with your childhood, things that happened to you when you were a kid, those types of things. And yeah, it's just a really well made, emotionally effective documentary, and I need to watch it again. I've only seen it the once, and it made an impression on me. My number 439.
Cool. My 439 is The Sound of Music. I don't need to say much about The Sound of Music, but It's great. And that's why I made my list.
My 439 is a documentary called Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. This is the documentary that was made while Francis Ford Coppola was making Apocalypse Now, which is my number 2 favorite movie of all time. I was telling you guys beforehand, I just watched it last night on 4K, and it was great to revisit it again in that format. The version I have actually comes with this documentary, which I'll be watching very soon. But this movie has quite the storied production. It took Coppola years to film it. Martin Sheen had a heart attack while in the jungle. He was using actual helicopters from, I think it was either the Philippine or the Thailand army. And then sometimes they'd be shooting a scene, and then those helicopters had to leave to fight an actual war at the time.
Yeah.
It's a movie. I mean, Apocalypse Now is Coppola's passion project, and it could have been a fiasco, and somehow he was able to create what I think is one of the greatest war movies and one of my favorite movies. And watching this documentary, you realize how tenuous this entire production was and how much this movie did not exist in the first place.
It probably depends on your definition of a fiasco, because I think most people would say it was a fiasco that happened to turn out a good movie.
Okay, yes.
That's what you see in the documentary. It's like it was a nightmare to get through.
The process was a fiasco, but the end product was not.
Sure, definitely. My number 438 is a movie from 2016, a British drama titled Lady Macbeth, which is the first movie that I saw, or at least noticed, Florence Pugh in. She stars as she's not really the titular Lady Macbeth character, right? Because she's not.
She is.
Is her last name actually Macbeth?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I obviously need to rewatch this one, but it's a great performance. Kind of a low-key, slow burn period piece film, but made me say, who is this person and what other movies has she acted in? And ever since then, I've been a fan. And if you are a fan of Florence Pugh and you haven't seen this one, you should. My number 438.
Cool. My 438 is a 2015 sci-fi film by the Wachowski sisters, and it's called Jupiter Ascending. And it's just further proof that I'm not a movie snob, because I thoroughly enjoyed watching Jupiter Ascending. Although I will readily admit that it is a poorly made movie. There's a lot going on that is messy and sloppy, and I think it only worked by a little bit of magic. That, like, all of the strangeness and like odd choices and million things that are just thrown in, for me, I just found fun and I got behind it. But I think you could easily be led astray by this film and never get back on track. But I found myself enjoying this way more than I thought I would. So Jupiter Ascending made it on my list. 438.
Never seen it. Probably never will.
Check it out. It's good.
Super interesting.
Is it? Okay.
Like I've said before, I mean, it's one of those movies that swings big. And so even if it's not 100% firing on all cylinders, you can see something in there that they're trying for. And sometimes when it does work, you're like, oh, if it could consistently do this, it would be a classic. It's just they can't hit home runs constantly through a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So,
well, my 438 is a movie from 2017. This is a horror film called It. And this is the first half of the
reboot It series.
Yeah, thank you. Reboot It series. I'm saying, where's a trilogy? What's the word for two? A duology?
I don't know.
I don't know. Reboot series. It is so this is based on a Stephen King novel. I've read the book. I do enjoy the book. The book is massive. I think it's nearly 1,000 pages because the book jumps between the story of kids encountering the It monster in the 50s and then re-encountering that monster again in the 80s. And the It movie, this reboot, kind of bumps it all up where now the kids are in the 80s and then the sequel, which I never saw, takes place in present time. But I thought this was a pretty good adaptation of the book. Stephen King books are always, I mean, this can be a hard book to adapt because there's just a lot of weird, horror dream things going on for the kids, and not everything that happens on the page always can translate to movies. So I think in this case, director Andy Muschietti did a pretty good job of kind of bringing that dread and that horror and keeping it faithful in tone to the book without having to copy every single moment of it. I also liked that they set it in the 80s. It did not feel too much. It didn't feel like a nostalgia trip. They weren't being like, this is the 80s, check out slap bracelets, there's nothing crazy like that. It had a bit of a Stranger Things vibe going on, partially because Finn Wolfhard was in it. Wolfhand, I should say. Yeah, no, Wolfhard. But that didn't bother me too much. But it's a scary movie. I saw this in the theater with a friend of mine, and it was one of my favorite theater experiences because first thing, horror in the theater is fun because everyone's reacting. But every single time there was a jump scare, my friend next to me would just like shout expletives at the screen.
Sure.
Like swear at the movie. And no one found it annoying. People found it hilarious, and it enhanced the experience of seeing it. I was excited for chapter 2, and then I heard it got terrible reviews, and I think, James, you put on one of your top 10 lists as like number 10 or 9. So I just never bothered with seeing the sequel or the sequel.
I think you could watch the sequel. It's not gonna make your top 500 list. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's gonna be lower than where you put this for sure. But it does cut back and forth to when they were kids again.
Ah.
So there are kids segments in the. I'd say there's like maybe 30 to 40% the kids from the first one.
Oh,
And
really?
then
Oh, that's a
the
lot.
other,
Okay.
60 to 70% are the new actors. And it's definitely not as good, but you're not going to be offended by it.
Okay.
And as a fan of the book, it might be worth watching just to know how somebody would do it, type of thing, how it's going to play out compared to the book.
Is the cosmic turtle in chapter 2?
It is, but not in the way you're probably imagining it would be.
Okay. That, I will say, one of my favorite parts of that book is the cosmic turtle because it's so weird and out there, but
Sure.
it kind of makes sense when you look at the greater universe that it lives in.
I haven't read the book,
Okay.
but I have talked to people who have, and that's the only reason I even know about the cosmic turtle, because if you hadn't read the book, you wouldn't even understand the reference in the movie to the cosmic turtle.
Okay,
Like
so it's not like a plot point. It's
not
like
a plot
a
point.
Easter egg.
Yes.
Bummer. Okay, that's good to know.
My number 437 is a movie that's on Netflix. Netflix owns it, so you can watch it right new. It's titled Private Life, starring Paul Giamatti, Catherine Hahn, and Kaylee Carter. Paul Giamatti and Catherine Hahn play a couple who are getting up there in age, like they're in their 40s, coming close to their 50s, and they're like, if we're ever going to have a kid, it might even be too late, but let's do it right now. And so they desperately are trying to have a kid, and of course are having trouble making that happen. And their niece comes to live with them. She's like 18 years old, and they kind of reevaluate whether they really want kids now that they have one that lives with them for a little while. And it's a great dramedy with some really good acting in it, and I enjoy it a lot. My number 437.
Cool. My 437 is a Russian film from 1944 called Ivan the Terrible Part 1. And it's directed and written by Sergei Eisenstein. And it's a film that I talked at length about on the show back when I watched it in the last 10 top 10. But this movie is so arresting in the images. It's shot in just this gorgeous high contrast black and white, with really elaborate sets and characters and costumes, and pretty much everyone you see on screen you want to know more about. They're all very hand-picked actors and looks for every role. It's very interesting. It tells the first part of the story of the historical figure Ivan the Terrible. I've only seen it once, but it had made a big impression on me, and I would love to check out Ivan the Terrible Part 2. And then I think the director died before he can make Part 3. So, really, really enjoyed Ivan the Terrible Part 1 from 1944. There's been remakes like in the 80s. So watch the 1944 version.
I used to confuse this with the Ivan Vasilich : Back to the Future, Ivan Terrible time travel movie.
Yeah. It couldn't be more different.
Very different, yes.
Yeah.
My number 437 is a documentary from 2009 called Kings of Pastry. And this is about pastry chefs trying to earn their MOF, which is the Meilleur Ouvrier de France, which means the best craftsman in France. And it is an award you can get if you are in a crafting field in France. You can take a test in your field, and if you pass this test, you are awarded your MOF. And you can see your MOF, at least if you're a pastry chef, by the fact that you have a collar on your coat that is of the French flag. So like if you've watched Nailed It and they have Jacques Torres as one of the judges, he has the French flag collar on his chef's coat. That's not because he's French. It's because he earned his MOF. So in this documentary, we're following 16 pastry chefs trying to earn their MOF. And they have basically 3 days of different pastry tasks they need to complete. And this isn't a competition as there's only one winner. Like all 16 could pass or all 16 could fail. They're not competing against each other. They're competing against themselves. And it is not it's a high pressure situation, but the documentary is not presented like American reality TV whatsoever. Like we're pretty much a fly on the wall in these kitchens watching these pastry chefs create amazing creations, sculptures, anything out of sugar. It's really a sight to see, especially if you do like baking and those kind of things. And actually what brought me to this movie is my wife, who is a pastry chef. She went to the French pastry school in Chicago. And in this movie, it features 2 of her instructors. One of the instructors has his MOF and is a judge, and the other instructor is trying to earn his MOF in this movie.
It's a good one. I remember we watched that for an episode, and I did not regret it.
Awesome. It's good to hear.
Same.
My number 436 is a movie titled The Rider from 2017, directed by Chloe Zhao, director of Nomad Land, and the upcoming The Eternals Marvel movie, which still blows my mind. Can't wait to see what that movie is for sure. This movie's great. It's a horse movie, so Zach loves it as well, and everybody should check it out. My number 436.
James, I'm surprised it's that low on your list for how much you like it.
I do like it. I think it should be higher, but
yeah, it comes up a lot on this podcast.
Sure. It's because Chloe Zhao's come up a lot. That's why it feels like it comes up a lot. I mean, between Nomadland winning, did it win Best Picture this year? It did, right?
Unfortunately.
Right. Between that and her directing Eternals, like she comes up often. So,
man, Nomadland was awesome.
Nomadland was good, but
it was good.
Far too much magic hour for my taste.
Okay, I Googled Ivan the Terrible Part 1 and my number 436, and there's not a page on the internet that mentions both. So my list on Letterboxd will be the first. It is Entrapment from 1999, starring Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Okay.
And this is just a really fun late 90s just kind of adventure thriller. movie.
Sure.
You have Sean Connery as the like training like old guard, and Catherine Zeta-Jones is like the super confident, capable new guard, and they're gonna steal some art, and they have to prepare for it. And I love movies that have like preparing for the big thing montages, and there's a lot of that in this. And I rewatched it recently, and I liked it just as much. So it goes on the list. Entrapment, 436.
I've never seen this movie.
What?
Well, I was in Paris when it came out. That's all. No.
La-di-da.
Wow.
France
didn't
I
get
was en
Entrapment?
Paris when this movie premiered. But I do remember that there was billboards for it all over Paris. So when I think of this movie, I think of that trip. I think of those billboards being all over the place.
I think that this movie is just as good without any nostalgia attached. So I think go enjoy it.
Okay. Will it be better than my vacation to Paris?
Shorter.
Good points. My number 436 is another horror movie that starts with It. It Comes at Night from 2017. This is my It horror segment of the list. This is this is not a traditional horror film. This is more of a psychological horror, if not thriller film, starring Joel Edgerton. And we don't quite know what's going on. We just know that there is something in the outside world that is killing humans. It could be a virus, it could be aliens, it could be something unexplained. And we are with a family, with Joel Edgerton as the father, who is holed up in a house just trying to survive this event. And outsiders come into the house and dealing with the consequences of having outsiders in your home during a terrible global event of some sort. I remember this movie was marketed as like a horror film, and it definitely has shades of horror to it, but it's much more about like that psychological aspect of it. And I'm pretty sure this is also an A24 film, so you're getting some of that A24 weirdness to it too.
It's a great
If it's
one.
not A24, it should be.
You saw Waves, right?
I have not seen Waves, no.
You never seen Krisha?
Nope.
Absolutely, you should see those. Same director, the only 3 movies he's made. But yeah, you should check those out.
All winners.
Yep, for sure. Very different movies than It Comes at Night in like its subject, but in its feel, very similar. My number 435 is Vice from 2018, which does feel like a movie that should be below the writer now that I think about it. But I do have good feelings about Vice. Christian Bale, Amy Adams, Sam Rockwell, Steve Carell's in the movie. It's about the former vice president, Dick Cheney. And it's not really a realistic take on him. I think what I enjoyed the most is how it's sort of satirical in nature, and all the performances are super heightened and not really trying to be one-to-one impressions of people. They're like the most unflattering interpretation of what that person is probably like in real life. And it's a fun movie to watch. And I enjoy this one and Adam McKay's movies in general. My number 435. And I also loved how at the end they were like, this movie was made by people who hate all the people we talked about in this movie. Like they literally like just come out and say like, yes, this movie was biased. Get over it. This is the credits. The end. And I like that.
Nice. My 435 is The Mask of Zorro from 1998.
Is this your late 90s part?
This my late 90s Catherine Zeta-Jones section.
Oh yeah, they're Catherine Zeta-Jones again.
Yeah. Where an older, well-respected actor trains a young neophyte in the business. This is Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins, and it is the story of Zorro. which there hasn't been a Zorro thing in a long time. So probably people now have no idea who Zorro is.
What's up with that? And they only did 2
Yeah.
Banderas movies. Why didn't they do 3? I don't understand.
They should have done 3.
They did another one?
No, they should have done 3. They did 2.
What's the second one?
The second Zorro, the
Mask of Mask of Zorro, and then the other one, The Legend
Revenge
of
of
Zorro.
Zorro. Yeah, something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
see, I don't even remember there being a second one.
There's a second one for sure. Zorro's kind of like the Robin Hood of Mexico, I would say. He's very swashbuckling. But I this one is action and it's funny and it's just a good time. They do not make movies that are just this easy to watch anymore. So Mask of Zorro, 435.
So I was in Switzerland when this came out, and or was it Sweden? I don't remember.
Oh my goodness.
No, I have seen The Mask of Zorro. Why does he have to be the Mexican Robin Hood? Why can't Robin Hood be the English Zorro?
Well, Robin Hood came way before Zorro did. Before there was a Mexico, there was a Robin Hood.
Yeah, this is just your Eurocentric worldview, Zach.
What the flow of time?
Exactly. That's all. I'm just gonna leave it right there. My number 435 is not a European film whatsoever. This is The Fiddler on the Roof.
It's a European
Definitely
film.
takes place in Europe. Yeah. This is the story of. This is a musical directed by Norman Jewison. The story of Tevye, who is a poor Jewish man living in, I believe, Tsarist Russia around the turn of the century. And it's a movie kind of about his life, about life in his village, about the greater politics going on. Tevye has a lot of crises of faith and tries to talk to his God, which I think is actually really interesting how they show that in the movie. And it's got great musical numbers.
Yeah.
Zach, did we play If I Were a Rich Man in band in middle school? Was that our introduction to Fiddler?
We did.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's such a great movie. The first half, I think, is stronger than the second half, but I loved it.
All the bangers are in like the first 4 or 5 songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really slaps.
All the jams. Yeah.
My number 434, also a banger, Green Book from 2018. Which
Green Book.
Yeah, I see. This is the reaction I expected, and that's why it's on my list. Because
Speaking of Eurocentric,
because Green Book is a good movie. Is it the best movie of 2018? No. Does it deserve to get some backlash for the way it tells the story? Sure. But if you take the movie as on its face value and you think back to how interesting the characters were, whether they were well acted, whether the story it tells is well presented, I still stand by the movie Green Book. And the movie gets a lot of backlash at this point, and I think it's more because of when it was released, the climate it was released into, and the fact that it won Best Picture, that it gets most of the backlash. In my mind, it's just a harmless, easy watch, sitting at 434 on my list of favorite 500 movies.
I can't think of a more room temperature film than Green Book.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I got to make space for everything on my list, even some room temperature ones.
That's true.
The lukewarm part of his list.
Yeah. All right. 434 for me is United 93.
Talk about lukewarm. Oh my gosh. The movie has no controversy attached to it.
A nice little film about 9/11.
Yeah, this is the Paul Greengrass kind of fly on the wall film about the hijacking and crash of United 93 on 9/11. It's told so emotionally cold, or distant, that it just almost makes it way more powerful than if they had tried to up the melodrama. And so, yeah, it's really affecting and really well done. Not exactly a fun watch, though, but it's good. United 93.
My number 434 is a fun watch. I believe this was on James' list last week and is The Cabin in the Woods from 2011. This movie is starring Chris Hemsworth, surprisingly, and it is about 5 college friends who go to a cabin in the woods for a fun weekend. It starts off like a cheesy mid-2000s horror film, and then it reveals something about itself, which I think is the fun of the movie, so I'm not going to spoil that. And then it becomes a satire and a parody and a comedy all based around the horror genre, and it's a lot of fun. It's a movie that I almost checked out of because it was getting to be too much of cheesy horror, and then it perfectly times when it makes that shift.
Love that movie as well.
Yeah.
You evidently like it a little more than I do.
I've also seen half the movies you've seen, so there's like some waiting going on here too.
It's true. My number 433 most favoritist movie of all time is 2010's Winter's Bone. Coming of age mystery drama starring Jennifer Lawrence and John Hawkes. It's directed by Deborah Granick, who went on to direct Leave No Trace, which is another low-key mystery. Well, that's not really a mystery movie, but low-key drama that I enjoy. And yeah, this is one of Jennifer Lawrence's first feature films. And she went on, obviously, to mega stardom with Hunger Games, but it all started with this movie. And she's great in it, with a great central performance as a teenager in the Ozarks who has to protect her family from eviction by tracking down her legal guardian who has disappeared. Her legal guardian being played by, I forget who her legal guardian is. I think John Hawkes is her uncle in the movie, something like that. It's awesome, though. And if you enjoy Jennifer Lawrence, you should check this one out. Winter's Bone.
Cool. My number 433 is a movie I've only seen once, and I never talk about because I don't remember it as well as I should. But I absolutely remember the experience watching it, and that's enough to put it on my list and make me want to watch it again at some point. It's Closer from 2004. This is a four-hander with Natalie Portman, Jude Law, Clive Owen, and Julia Roberts. And really, like you haven't seen them before. This movie is very tense, and it's all dialogue, pretty much. And it's about 2 couples that are kind of thrown for a loop when one of them starts talking to a guy from one of them starts talking to the girl from the other one. And it's just a emotionally kind of like cutting film where they're all just kind of ripping into each other's souls a little bit. So it's just, I don't know. This movie stands out in my memory as being very kind of gripping in the dialogue, whereas at the same time, they're all just kind of awful people, you know? It's kind of like a 4-person version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
So yeah, Closer is a movie I need to check out more, but it made the list, 433.
Who's the director? It's kind of a famous person.
Mike Nichols.
Didn't he do like The Graduate?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
Yeah, he did a lot of famous stuff. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf being one of them.
Oh, well, they're perfect.
And The Birdcage.
The Birdcage, yeah. Yeah, he's one of those directors where I forget that name, but I've liked a lot of his movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My number 433 is a 2011 film directed by Joe Wright. This is Hannah, starring Saoirse Ronan, Eric Bana, and Cate Blanchett. In this movie, Eric Bana is I think he's like a CIA operative or a former CIA operative who's been raising his daughter, Saoirse Ronan, in seclusion to become a assassin fighter herself. And then she is eventually released and being pursued by Cate Blanchett, who's trying to bring her in, if not take her out. And this is it's a interesting action spy thriller, but it's told with some artisticness to it also. It's not just a straightforward action spy movie. There's a little bit of artsy fartsy stuff going on in the best way. So I like it. It's a early Saoirse Ronan film, and it's worth checking out.
Sure. I've never thought of Hannah as an artsy fartsy movie.
Yeah, artsy fartsy is not the right word.
It's not like a straight thriller. I'll agree with you. It has like a European edge to it, in my opinion.
That's
like
maybe, yeah.
The way
yeah.
in its storytelling. But yeah.
European artsy fartsy.
I like that movie as well. I like all the wonders in it. There's a couple
Are
of
they
decent
real wonders, or are they well hidden wonders, or am I going to be annoyed by them? Because I don't remember those.
You don't remember the wonders?
I've seen this movie once, and I think it was in 2011.
Absolutely. You should watch it and be annoyed by it.
All right. I look forward to dropping
not,
off of my 500.
They're not all real wonders, so maybe you don't notice when they're not real wonders.
Ooh, I'll be the judge of that.
My number 432 is from 2012, 21 Jump Street, which is a movie I don't talk about either, but I enjoy. I like 21 Jump Street. I feel like there's been a dearth of comedies over the last decade, and 21 Jump Street sticks out in my brain as one of the good ones. And it's directed and written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. It stars Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. I think they're a good comedy duo. And the movie is just silly fun. And I like silly fun every now and then. And that's why it's on my list. 432.
Cool. Okay, my number 432 is a film that used to be in my top 400 and it has since dropped down. It's called Sunshine. So instead, I'm going to talk about the movie that bumped it, my number 371. But there's going to be a few of these coming up. And so I'm not going to re-explain what's happening every time. I'll just say what movie it is, but it was bumped by and then go into it. So my 371 is Alien 3, directed by David Fincher. It's my favorite Alien film.
It would be.
Yeah. I think that's controversial to say, but I came to the Alien films late. And this one is just so distinctive. I don't know. It absolutely has a visual style. I think that's a cool thing about the Alien franchise is they're all different in different ways. But I like this one. I liked that it all took place in this kind of prison camp with like this weird religious cult going on. And I found this movie to be very, very interesting. And so that's why Alien 3 is on my list.
When we watched this together, was it your first time or had you seen it before?
I had seen it before.
Okay.
You had not seen it before?
It was my first time watching it. I think it was Zach's second or third time. I mean, it's his favorite Alien movie, so I'm sure he's seen it a ton of times.
Is that a requirement for people's lists? Because
yes,
there's definitely some on my list that I have not seen multiple times.
I just remember Alien 3 having like this sickly green 90s music video look to it, and 2 hours of that was a lot.
It's directed by a guy who directs music videos, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but music videos exist in like 3 to 4 minute chunks.
Sure. What's your 432, Kyle?
My 432 is a documentary from 1988 directed by Errol Morris, The Thin Blue Line. This is a true crime documentary. It's a precursor to all the true crime podcasts and TV shows and everything that we seem to consume as a society today. And it is examining the murder of a police officer in Dallas. This documentary was shot after the murder, after the trial, after the conviction. And Errol Morris is interviewing people involved in it, the witnesses, the police officers who were present, who arrested it, the actual convicted murderer himself, and examining like, was this a fair trial? Did this guy actually do it? Or was there more going on to this whole story? And Errol Morris is an amazing documentarian, and it's on display in this movie right here. And if you like Serial, like this is very much a precursor to Serial of like, let's relitigate a murder from the past. But it is much more, I won't say satisfying, but at least much more focused than Serial was over its, 10 episodes.
What happened to Serial? They had that one season. Then they had the season about the guy from Iraq. Then they had a season where they followed a courthouse, like the different court cases coming through a courthouse. And then I think it's been years since I've seen a Serial season.
Was S-Town Serial, or was that different?
It was a Serial production, but they released it like all at once. It wasn't like a serialized week to week thing.
I think Serial got eaten up by its own monster created.
Yeah.
Like everyone created a true crime serialized podcast, and it just sort of got forgotten, or maybe MailChimp went under. They couldn't afford sponsors anymore. I'm not sure.
Possibly. That's possible.
Does MailChimp still exist? I really want to know.
Oh, I use it weekly.
It does? Okay.
Twice a week for my clients.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so do I.
Alive and kicking for sure.
Well, without its sponsors, I just don't know if people have heard of it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hear it advertised on podcasts quite like we did 6 years ago. But,
no.
But yes, it's still around.
They don't need to.
I think they saturated the podcast listening audience, and so maybe they don't need to do that anymore. My number 431 is actually a remake of a 1977 film. The remake was released in 2018, and the movie is called Suspiria. This is a Luca Guadagnino film, director of Call Me By Your Name. This is his strange, follow-up to that movie, I would say, to go from that movie to this movie. But Suspiria, if you know anything about the 70s original, is not a movie for the faint of heart. It's like a Italian horror movie. And this is the English language remake. Strange movie that's still not for the faint of heart, about a dance academy that is run by a coven of witches. And it's really good if you like horror movies. But if you don't, you should stay far away from this movie because it definitely goes places. And I enjoy it, and I enjoy the score, which was written and performed by Tom York. So on top of it being just a strange movie, it has an interesting soundtrack. My number 431.
Rihanna didn't do the soundtrack?
Nope, not on this one. She passed. They gave it to
Did you
Tom
say
York.
Rihanna?
Rihanna, maybe?
Who's
Riddle
Elijah for? Rihanna. No, I mean, you can say Rihanna.
Rihanna? No, it's Rihanna.
Rihanna.
All right, my number 431 is The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon, directed by Doug Liman. I don't need to say anything about this. It's awesome.
Which one is Identity? Can you tell us?
The first one.
The first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
My number 431 is Ray from 2004. This is the biopic of Ray Charles. Could think of his last name for a second there. Starring Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles. And it is a incredible performance from Jamie Foxx as the blues singer. I'm pretty sure he won an Oscar for this. And this style of biopic was kind of the rage. We had Ray, we had Walk the Line, and then John C. Reilly came on with Walk Hard and sort of put a nail in that coffin. And we have moved on from this style of musical biopic, but it was definitely a genre for its time.
Agreed. A movie I've seen once and never again, but I do remember enjoying it.
Yeah, it's good.
I didn't like it. It's too dark.
Was that a joke about blind people?
It was not. No, they would have
not about blind people.
flashbacks. No, there'd be all these flashbacks to like him as a child and like a lot of child danger. I just was turned off by that film.
I'm sorry that Ray Charles' life was too dangerous for you. Would you like it to be simpler?
I just don't want them to play up his real childhood trauma for cheap thrills.
We really should have had your mom watch that
thrills?
first and let us know if you should watch it or not.
Yeah.
Wow, I never heard Ray described as a movie for cheap thrills.
Cheap thrills.
Well, that's why you keep coming back to this show.
My number 430 is a movie from 2018 titled Mid-90s, which is an A24 film directed by Jonah Hill. He is not in the movie, though. He's strictly just the director. It stars Lucas Hedges and Catherine Watterson and a bunch of non-actors who are mostly like skateboard punks. And it's great. I enjoyed it a lot and need to rewatch it. It's definitely like kind of like a hangout movie where I couldn't really tell you what the high points of the stories were. More just like I remember seeing the relationship between these kids, and it definitely brought me back to when I was growing up in the 90s and late 80s in California, because that's where it's set, and also somewhat in that time period. And there's a brother relationship in this that I felt was very realistic. And yeah, it's a good one. My number 430.
Cool. My 430 is Wonder Woman. I've talked about it on a previous list, but it was bumped down by my 364 Waves, which we have already mentioned. Waves is so good. It's a straight up drama, a family drama, and it's pretty intense. So don't put it on unless you're ready for a lot of intense family drama. But if you're prepared, I think it's worthwhile. It's about a family of four that goes through a traumatic incident and how it affects the family. It's kind of an anthology movie in that there's two sections to it, which are absolutely linked, but just have very different focus. And it's so good. So James tipped me off onto seeing Waves, and it was worth watching. So that is why it made my list at 364.
So I recently rewatched Waves, and I watched it up at the cabin in Georgia, and it was my sister and my sister's old roommate, and they had never seen it before. And we got done with the movie, and my sister's roommate just let out the loudest exhale I think I've ever heard because she didn't realize it, but she had like been holding her breath through most of the movie, because it's just one of those movies that's like and super intense. You know what I mean? It's like one scene after another of intensity, even though it's not like an action movie or anything like that. It's just a lot of intense things are happening. And it's one of those where the next morning I was like, are you ever going to trust me with a movie recommendation again? And she's like, whatever you pick next, she's like, it was really good, but I'm not sure I can handle another one like back to back like that. And I was like, I get it. I totally get it. That is an intense movie for sure. So I'm glad I made your list, Zach.
I will watch it with Galen.
Don't.
No, he needs to understand what trauma is all about. It's a good thing to experience early. Just,
okay.
Yeah, get that emotion out of the way. My number 430 is another 2020 film, which I consider 2021 based on when we can actually see it. This is I Care a Lot. This is a dark comedy thriller starring Rosamund Pike. She plays a scam artist who becomes a conservator for rich retired people in nursing homes and takes all their money. And conservatorships has been in the news a lot recently, so it's kind of an interesting connection there. She becomes conservator for Diane Wiest and starts her scam, and then her son, played by Peter Dinklage, shows up and is on to Rosamund Pike and has some words for her, amongst other things. Like I said, it's definitely a satire. It's dark. It's funny. It's a thriller. it has some 80s looks to it at times, just like the lighting in some scenes. And it's a Netflix movie, and it surprised me. I was expecting not a lot from this movie and enjoyed it much more than I thought I would.
Nice. I enjoyed that movie as well. Another one on Netflix that anybody could watch right now.
Right now.
My number 429 is A Star is Born, which is the recent remake starring and directed by Bradley Cooper, also starring Lady Gaga. And this movie was a big surprise for me. I mean, I knew it was going to be watchable and things like that, but it turned out to be kind of awesome and very like drama filled, but also kind of a vibey movie in a weird way. And I really enjoyed seeing these characters act together on screen, even during the trying times of their relationship as depicted. And Sam Elliott was awesome in the movie. And I certainly know who Sam Elliott is and I've seen him in things, but it kind of made me want to reevaluate how much I look for Sam Elliott in a movie, just because he's really great in this. I'm sure there are some lesser appreciated movies that Sam Elliott probably has a bigger role than his traditional supporting role in most of the movies I've seen him in. And so, yeah, I'm not going to say I was inspired to do that because I haven't done it in 2 years, but I feel like I still should. And I think that says something. My number 429.
Very cool. My 429 is called Operation Avalanche from 2016, directed by Matt Johnson and written by Matt Johnson and Josh Bowles, and starring Matt Johnson and Josh Bowles. I had them on my radar from their film The Dirties, which is also on my top 500 list. And Operation Avalanche is a very different film, but it's also really good. It's a fictional tale from 1967 of the CIA faking the moon landing, basically. So it's like alternative history, and then they kind of, it's great. It's got a cool aesthetic to it. You know, it looks like old timey, and it's just a great alternative version of like what might have happened kind of a thing. And I enjoyed it a lot. Operation Avalanche.
I actually watched this fairly recently based on your recommendation.
Cool. What'd you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool take on alternative history. They visit the set of 2001: A Space Odyssey at one point with some camera trickery. Kubrick's in it briefly. I thought that was actually kind of a neat segment.
Yeah.
But I don't care for Matt Johnson as an actor. He started to annoy me as the movie went on, and he is the guy in that movie.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want to see their other work, but I also know that he puts himself as the star in his movies too.
In The Dirties, his particular style of acting works way better plot-wise
than it does in Operation Avalanche.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. He wasn't working for me as the movie went on, but
Sure.
I still enjoyed it overall. My number 429 is Young Frankenstein by Mel Brooks from 1974. This movie seems low for me. I feel like it should be higher, but here's where it is right now. This is Mel Brooks' parody satire of the Frankenstein story, starring Gene Wilder and Terry Garr. And it's funny. It's got all the Mel Brooks humor you would expect. Some of it is punny, some of it is more gross out, overt in nature. Gene Wilder plays a great Dr. Frankenstein, I believe is how he pronounces it. Trying to separate himself from the family. Peter Boyle, he plays the monster. Totally forgot about him. He's great in this movie too. And it actually does parody both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. So I would say if you like this movie, at least check out the originals so you can kind of see what is being teased this whole time.
Yeah, and I think between those two, Bride of Frankenstein is a much stronger film.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a better film.
My number 428 is You Were Never Really Here, which is a Lynn Ramsey movie, director of We Need to Talk About Kevin. This is the movie she made with Joaquin Phoenix, where he's a hitman, a hired gun who has to do a job, and then in the course of executing that job, he, I don't know, changes his mind, something like that, decides that even though he's lived his entire life as a hired gun, he grows a conscience on some level and decides to flip the script on what he was hired to do. And it's a pretty violent movie, but well made with a solid central performance as per usual from Joaquin Phoenix. Short movie, 9 minutes from beginning to end of credits. And if you were good with We Need to Talk About Kevin, you will probably enjoy I Was Never Really Here. You Were Never Really Here. My number 428.
That's a really good pick. I like that movie a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, my 428 dropped. It's Taxi Driver. Instead, I'll talk about my 363 Bad Trip, which is a bingo with Kyle.
Hey, bingo.
Bad Trip is so funny. It's really, really funny. It's just a series of like hidden camera kind of pranks woven together with a storyline, and it's just super well done. I couldn't speak of it highly enough. But it's really funny.
Good pick. My 428 is kind of a previously mentioned. This is Get Out from 2017, directed by Jordan Peele, starring Daniel Kaluuya and Allison Williams. They are a couple, and they go to her family's estate in upstate New York. Her parents are played by Bradley Whitford and Catherine Keener, and things start to get a little weird. At first, Daniel Kaluuya thinks it's maybe just her parents reacting to their interracial relationship, but then as the story goes on, there is much more happening. This is a horror film. There is both racial subtext and just racial text to this movie. So definitely like some of it's underneath and some of it's quite overt. But it's a very good movie and a really good first outing from Jordan Peele.
Agreed. My number 427 is a romantic comedy from 2009 titled Labor Pains. I enjoy this movie a lot. It's a Lindsay Lohan movie where
it's top 4 for you.
I thought it was top 4 for you.
Well, according to my letterbox, it's top 4. But I mainly just put it there just to throw people off. So Labor Pains is about a girl who figures out that if she pretends that she's pregnant, people give her special treatment. And she does this for a while and then realizes if she stops, the gravy train stops. And so she tries to maintain it for 9 months. And then what's going to happen after that? It's a real suspenseful movie that if you have not seen, you should definitely check out. Easily one of Lindsay Lohan's best, short of maybe Mean Girls, Labor Pains, 427.
Don't sleep on Parent Trap.
Too much love for the original to really get into the remake.
Well,
Don't sleep on I Know Who Killed Me.
Have not seen that one.
Chapter 23.
Haven't seen that one.
okay. My 427 is another dropped film, Pride and Prejudice, the Joe Wright, Keira Knightley version. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 357, You Can't Take It With You, which is from 1938, and it's directed by Frank Capra, and it stars Jimmy Stewart. And I talked about this kind of recently on a Last in Top 10. It just totally surprised me how funny this was. It's about a guy that is interested in a girl who lives with a very eccentric group of people, and he decides to give up his like family's wealth in order to be one of their free-spirited kind of folk. And it's just so much fun to watch. So you can't take it with you. Frank Capra, 1938, is my 357.
Man, you throw me off when you do that because I'm like, wait, what number are we on?
Sorry, man.
It's all right. My 427 is Batman Begins from 2005, directed by Christopher Nolan. This is his first outing in the Batman trilogy with Christian Bale as Batman, Michael Caine, Liam Neeson, Katie Holmes, Gary Oldman, etc. I feel like this movie has aged well because was this movie talked a lot about after it came out in 2005? Like, how did we get from Batman Begins to Dark Knight? Because
Right.
like now we look at Nolan Batman and it's iconic, mostly because of Dark Knight. But I think people enjoy this movie and it's regarded well. But I don't think it was regarded as well, 15 years ago.
I think it was regarded well enough.
Yeah.
I think people were so over the Batman and Robin, stuff from
George
Joel
Clooney
Schumacher
and
and stuff like that. Like all the shenanigans that happened in those last two movies. And they took some time off. And then Batman Begins came out and people were like, all right. No neon in this movie. Just a different interpretation of Batman. Nothing that like blew anybody's socks off, but at least they're getting good actors and people are not cheesing it up.
Mhm.
And then The Dark Knight like blew that out of the water.
Yes, cemented it. Yep.
Right. For sure. But
So
yeah,
obvious-
I agree. Like people liked Batman Begins, but it wasn't a phenomenon until The Dark Knight.
Right. I wonder if did Nolan sign a 3-picture deal right away, or did Batman Begins do well enough where they're like, all right, let's make another one.
I know he wanted to do Batman movies for a long time.
Okay.
His very first movie, the main character walks through a door that has a Batman logo pinned to the door. Like he's been a fan
that's
since
right.
he
The
was
following, yeah.
since he was a kid. So I think he was on board to make as many as made sense
Mhm.
from the beginning. And Begins did well enough as a reboot that they certainly gave him the other two.
Well, I'm glad it did well enough because we got the Dark Knight out of it. So
Agreed. My number 426 is The Disaster Artist, another A24 movie, and one that it's hard to think about this movie and not consider that James Franco is playing a problematic guy, and turns out he himself is a problematic guy, and he also directed it, and it was a fairly critically lauded movie at the time. And if you separate those realities, I still think it's a good movie about a cult movie, about a cult figure, really, in the movie sphere. And I think it's told in an interesting way with good performances from Seth Rogen and Alison Brie and Eric Grainer's in this. Lots of great people. And as in evaluating the piece of art itself, I think it still stands up as a well-made piece of art. But it is hard for me to stump for this movie, just knowing that James Franco's kind of not a great person. So my number 426, with regret, is the Disaster Artist.
All right, my 420. Sorry, I gotta take some water. Hold on a second.
Do it.
Vamp for me a second.
My little mea culpa. There wasn't enough time in there to take a drink of water.
it
I
was
didn't
it
realize.
was riveting, James. I wasn't thinking about anything else except for your apology.
It was an apology. It was a mea culpa. There's
You
a
could have just
difference.
taken off the list.
No, I
This
go
is-
by the numbers.
This is not the 10 Commandments here.
Mine is the Ten
Okay.
Commandments. How dare
My 426 is another movie that dropped, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So instead, I'm going to talk about the movie that bumped it, Dark Days, at 3:45. This is a documentary from 2000 about the homeless population that lives underground in the tunnels of New York City. And it is fascinating. It's all in black and white. These are a whole population of homeless people that live underground in tunnels. And it just goes around and talks to them and interviews them. And it is so interesting to watch. It's called Dark Days. Check it out.
I've not seen that one. I'll have to
It's
put it on my
good.
list. I think I've heard you talk about it before, but I didn't realize it was a top 500 movie for you. That's awesome.
It's a top 400 movie for me.
Sure.
And you'll really like it, James.
It's not a top 400 movie for you. It's top
No,
500
it is.
movie
It's
for
actually
you.
one of those
number-
other crazy switcheroos on us.
It's number
okay.
it's 345 on my list.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
For
I understand
426, Zach talks about 345.
now. Gotcha.
Ask him for one movie, he gives you three.
Well, it's because I didn't just make my 400 to 500 list.
Sure.
I redid my top 500.
Yeah, I did too. I just didn't didn't record where I moved things. Go ahead, Kyle. 426.
My number 426 is a 2000 film directed by Guy Ritchie, Snatch. This is his follow-up to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. This movie is sort of two plots in one that eventually collide and intersect. The first one is featuring mostly Jason Statham. This is pre-action star Jason Statham and Stephen Graham. They're trying to track down a stolen diamond. And then the other has to do with Brad Pitt and Dennis Farina. Brad Pitt plays a bare-knuckled boxer. And I think Dennis Farina is playing the promoter and is trying to keep this bare knuckle boxing fight thing going on. And eventually these two stories intersect in your traditional Guy Ritchie style, where there's a lot of crazy characters. There's sort of the speed ramping he's become famous for. Brad Pitt's character is playing, I believe he's called like an Irish Paki, which is a caravan dweller, and his accent is so thick and his dialect is so different that you can hardly understand what he's saying, both you, the audience, and everyone else in the movie. And it's a fun movie, especially if you like kind of early Guy Ritchie. If you like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and haven't seen his other stuff, Snatch is worth checking out.
My number 425, we're halfway there, is Hostiles, the Western from just a few years ago, starring Christian Bale and Rosamund Pike, amongst others. And yeah, I enjoy this Western. It's visually beautiful to look at. It's a Scott Cooper movie, director of Crazy Heart, which is higher on my list, but Hostiles is still great. And it's a movie that pulls no punches as far as the pain one could feel having gone through the harsh reality of living in the Wild West. And it's a good one. 425.
Yeah, that movie exists in such a brutal world.
Sure.
I didn't enjoy it. Okay. My 425 is another movie that bumped Mongol, The Rise of Genghis Khan. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 340, another documentary, The Waiting Room. So The Waiting Room, all it is they walk around a waiting room and they interview people about why they're there. A waiting room for an emergency room. And so it's just a series of little conversations with people about why they're in the emergency room and what they're dealing with. And it is so engrossing. It's just very compelling listening to these people talk. And it's one of those documentaries where they just struck gold somehow by being at this waiting room at the right time for these right people. So I really liked it a lot. It's from 2012, The Waiting Room.
Zach, are the rest of your 25 movies all bumps?
No,
Okay.
but a lot of them are bumps.
A lot of them are bumps. All right. Because we're at the lower part of the list now. So things have bumped them out.
exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My 425 is The Grapes of Wrath from 1940, directed by John Ford. This is starring Henry Fonda. He plays Tom Joad. And in this movie, he has just gotten out of jail and has returned to the family farm. And this movie is during the Dust Bowl, so the family farm is no more. They cannot grow crops. Everything has turned to dust. So the family makes the journey to California for a new life. And along the way, they kind of witness sort of various horrors and trials people are going through as they're making this pilgrimage from Oklahoma to California. This is very much a like quintessential American film because it does tell the story of one American experience people were having 100 years ago. You've got great Henry Fonda performance and I would say nearly iconic speech he gives at the very end. It's a speech that I don't have fully memorized, but when he delivers it, it's pretty great.
Nice.
Good movie.
My number 424 is Thor Ragnarok. I mean, what to say about this? It's a Marvel movie. It's high on my list because it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. I enjoyed Taika Waititi's take on the character in this third installment. Easily my favorite Thor movie and probably the funniest of all the Marvel movies. And that's why it's my number 424.
It's awesome. My 424 is another bump, Traffic. So instead, my 322 is The Last Laugh from 1924. It is a silent film about an aging doorman who loses his job but doesn't want to tell his family and friends, and so he pretends he still works there. It is one of my favorite silent films. It's so good, and that's why it's on my list.
My number 424 is another Brad Pitt film from the year earlier. This is Fight Club from 1999, directed by David Fincher. I'm not going to get into the plot of this movie. I think everyone knows what Fight Club is about. It's a pretty popular film. I'm surprised that this movie is also here. I also have not seen this movie in a long time. And I think the reason why it's so low is because I remember liking it when I saw it when it came out like in high school, 1999. And then I got to college 2 years later. And it seems like a lot of guys I knew took the wrong lessons from Fight Club. And instead of like seeing it as a movie about like consumerism and, you know, misogyny, they instead saw a movie about like macho white guys. And so I just think like seeing people talk about it for 4 years, 5 years in college just kind of soured me on the whole movie. But I think it's worth a rewatch on my part. Because I'm pretty sure I took the right lessons from that movie when it first came out.
Yeah, I feel like I liked it for all those reasons, the reasons why you were turned off by it. And then I changed. So maybe the people in college who used to talk about it in that way changed.
I hope so.
You know, with a little bit of time and perspective.
Or they stormed the Capitol on January 6th. One of those two happened.
That could be too. That could be too. I agree. I think I didn't realize I learned those lessons from it back then until lessons were learned. And then I was like, oh, that's not really what it's about. All right. My number.
Actually, I have a quick question for Zach.
Sure.
Zach, do you remember in high school after this movie came out, a group of kids started an actual fight club?
What?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And then our student newspaper like ran an expose about it with photos and everything. And it was very controversial.
It was controversial.
Your student newspaper like wasn't edited by a staff member, or like they could write like that there was a fight club at your school and nobody.
There was I don't know the exact politics of it. I know that there was a new student editor our senior year, a kid in our grade, and he kind of turned the student newspaper into like a tabloid rag. Do you remember this at all, Zach? Or am I just...
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
like rumors and stuff. So it was like they just let him run whatever he wanted, basically.
I guess so. I don't know who was overseeing the student newspaper, but I remember the quality greatly dropped that last year of high school when this kid took over.
If it was the same person,
went up. I would have totally read my school newspaper if it had that type of stuff in it.
I do know it was if it was the same faculty member that oversaw the yearbook, then there was probably not very much oversight because I was one of the yearbook editors.
Oh yeah,
and just everything got through.
Yeah, Zach and I were in charge of an entire section of the yearbook.
Sure.
Yeah,
and we put in anything we wanted.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. No holds barred.
There's a shot. I think it's Italian club in my yearbook, which was like a club. I was in Italian class. even though I
What?
can barely speak a single word of Italian. 2 years of Italian I took.
I didn't know you were an
Couldn't say a
Italian.
sentence in it. So back then, I'm going to sound very old. In order to take like a long picture of like 30 kids standing, they like started the camera here and then actually moved it across. Did they do that when they took your like bigger club pictures and stuff like that?
No.
I was the photographer and I was able to get all the kids in the frame. Thank you very much.
Maybe that's the difference between like 10 years of technology. I don't know.
We also used rows, James. Like we didn't line them all up one at a time.
We had rows. It wasn't a line. It wasn't a firing squad. It was
How many people were in the Italian club?
Like 30 some.
Oh,
I would say.
As a professional yearbook photographer, I can easily get 30 some into a 4x6 frame. No questions asked.
I will tell you two things about my high school yearbook. There are a couple club photos of clubs that absolutely did not exist that we invented day of and then just recruited people to be in the picture because nobody was keeping track of whether the clubs actually existed. It was just like people got in line and they took a photo of you and they asked you filled out a paper of what group you were with.
Amazing.
And then the order in which people were standing in the photo. Anyway, in the I believe it's the Italian club photo, I'm on the far left, and then I'm again in the far right in the same photo because they moved the camera to pan it, and so I jumped behind the bleachers and ran to the other side, and then stood up on the other side before the camera got there.
That's so great.
Do you have this photo?
I'd have to dig up my yearbook, which I will do. The next time I'm with my yearbook, I will dig it up and
okay, please.
We'll put it online somewhere. Yeah. Yearbook stories are fun. My number 423 is Stronger, which is a biographical drama directed by David Gordon Green, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Tatiana Maslany. And it's about this guy who loses his legs in the Boston Marathon bombing and has to put his life back together because it kind of, his plan for life absolutely changes in that moment because he lost both his legs. And his girlfriend, who he's on the rocks with, when it happens, when the Boston bombing happens and he loses his legs, is in this weird position where she still cares for this person, but the direction the relationship was headed was that they weren't going to be together. And now he needs to lean on her and she needs to be there for him on some level. And so it's an interesting relationship drama mixed in with an inspirational movie about a guy who kind of conquers or is working on conquering a setback in life. And good performances from both of them. Solidly directed movie that sticks in my memory. Couple scenes in the movie stick in the forefront of my memory. Stronger, my number 423.
It's awesome. My 423 is another bump, Short Circuit. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 321, The Thomas Crown Affair from 1968. Kyle mentioned a Norman Jewison film. This is also Norman Jewison starring Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. And Steve McQueen is like a super wealthy dude that just enjoys stealing art. He just likes the thrill of it. And Faye Dunaway is trying to catch him as an insurance investigator. And I just find this movie so utterly charming. And it's just seductive and it's so good. I like the remake too from the 90s, but Thomas Crown Affair from 68, super good.
My number 423 is John Wick: Chapter 2 from 2017, directed by Chad Stahelski. This is my third favorite of the John Wick movies. I actually like this more upon rewatch, but John Wick is such a favorite of mine that the sequel was never going to live up to it. This movie expands upon the world that was built in the first John Wick, some for the better, some for the worse, but still gives you a lot of great Keanu Reeves-driven action and fighting.
Nice. My number 422 is Dope, the movie Dope from 2015.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a Rick Fumiyawa film, and it has a mostly somewhat unknown cast. There's a couple rappers in there, like ASAP Rocky and Tyga and stuff like that. But the core cast was relatively unknown, at least at the time. And it's about a kid who becomes a drug dealer by accident, kind of, in that he uh, gets stuck with some drugs, and eventually the guy who owns them is like, "You better sell them and bring me the money," and he has to, even though that's not really his vibe. And it's filled with great music. It's kind of a throwback movie, like it feels like a movie from the '90s. Like I think it's set in modern time. Modern time. It's set today or 2015, but all the kids in the movie are like obsessed with the '90s.
Yeah.
So they only
that's
talk
it.
about '90s music and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just a fun kind of adventure-y, low-key adventure-y movie, and fun to watch these characters on screen. My number 422.
Okay. My 422 is another bump, Black Narcissus. What bumped it was something that broke into my top 300 at 290. It's Nathan For You, Finding Francis, which is a 2-hour final episode to a season of Nathan For You. It's 2 hours long. I mean, it's feature length, so I'm gonna include it as a movie. It is so hilarious and also poignant, and like has actually something interesting to say to a larger conversation. I think it's so good, and I'd recommend it to anyone. Nathan For You, Finding Francis.
My 422 is Spider-Man 2 from 2004, directed by Sam Raimi. This is the second of his Spider-Man movies. I do enjoy this one more than the first Spider-Man movie. But this is a movie that I have not really seen in over 10 years. I do want to revisit it. I think I've just been waiting for, like, I don't know, a cheap Blu-ray purchase or a 4K release or something like that of it. But I remember it did a great job of taking the Spider-Man origin story set up in the first movie and then really expanding upon that, building the world out, and giving us a great Doc Ock played by Alfred Molina. I heard that he's in one of the newer Spider-Man movies, and his tentacles are all CG, and he was saying how weird it was to act with nothing there as tentacles versus Spider-Man 2 when they were puppets. He had something physical to respond to on his back.
Sure. I mean, they weren't always puppets in
of course,
Spider-Man
yeah,
2.
but
I mean, but in Spider-Man, the newest Spider-Man, they're entirely CG.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. I hear you. My number 421 is from 2018. I don't think this is a bingo from this episode, but maybe from 499. It's Widows.
I had that last episode. Yep.
Right. Directed by Steve McQueen, starring Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, Colin Farrell, Daniel Kaluuya. It's great and has one of my favorite oneers of all time. It's just like a camera attached to the hood of a car as it drives through a neighborhood. You can't even see any of the actors in the shot. They're just talking in the back of a limo. There's just so much storytelling going on in that extended sequence. And I like the plot of the film as well. And all the performances, particularly Elizabeth Debicki, I think was a big surprise for me in this movie. Yeah, check it out. Widows, my 421.
That's awesome. My 421, it's another bump, Guardians of the Galaxy. Instead, I'm going to talk about my 286, Midnight in Paris. It has Owen Wilson, Rachel McAdams, Kathy Bates. It's so great. He casually walks through Paris and then goes back in time to like the 30s and meets all of his heroes. And I just really like this movie.
My 421 is a 2021 film, Raya and the Last Dragon. This is a Disney movie starring Kelly Marie Tran and Awkwafina. This is a story about a I guess an older civilization, China, which has this, or based on Chinese lore, I should say, which exists in the world of dragons. And in this case, Rai is trying to assemble or bring back the dragons to fight an evil force that's taking over her land. It is both a very interesting, a well-told story, but also a beautiful movie to look at. Each land in this story has a different visual style to it, depending on like what part of the dragon body it represents. And the movie does a really great job of just doing visual storytelling through that. It's a movie that I liked and it surprised me.
I don't know what scenario it would have to be for me to rewatch that movie, but I do want to.
Just because you want to. That's why.
I know. It's a kids movie for girls, though.
No, it's not. That's come on, James.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I enjoyed it. I can enjoy that, but I just can't imagine it winning over all the movies I haven't seen or movies that are higher on my list.
I think it could
to rewatch.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, only one way to find out.
Yeah. All right, bros, we're there. 420, yo. My 420 is War Games from 1983.
Great choice.
A movie about a kid during the Cold War of the 80s who is a early age hacker who breaks into the U.S. military system, thinks it's just a video game, and turns out he's accidentally activating real life nuclear weapons. And he triggers a domino effect of the Russians turning on their weapons. And yeah, I mean, it's an early like techno thriller, I would say, with a young Matthew Broderick in the central performance. Ali Sheedy's great in it as well, and Dabney Coleman. And it's probably awful, but I love it and I've seen it multiple times over the course of my life. War Games, 420. Yo.
Great choice. My 420, it's another bump, Gone Girl. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 251, Little Women from 2019. We've talked about this a lot on the show. It's Greta Gerwig's version of Little Women, and I think it's super well done, and I enjoy it a lot. I think it's a new classic.
I think I might have a repeat here on 420. Did I talk about Spartacus last episode?
Oh, yeah, you did.
I definitely did. Okay, well, because my 420 is also Spartacus.
Which totally makes sense. What were you smoking?
That is hilarious.
What was I smoking?
It's a bingo.
What did you say, Zach?
It's a bingo.
Yeah, I bingoed myself.
Now, the real question is, where does Spartacus actually belong? Here or where it was before?
I feel like it belongs here.
Okay.
So, I'll just have to I'll find something new for 451. And you can go to Letterboxd when I post this list and find out what it is, because it's not Spartacus. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, listen to last week's episode.
Nice.
That's awesome.
My episode 419
I ranked so many movies for this, guys. I'm surprised there's only one repeat.
No, you're good. What did I say? 419 is
419.
419. Star Wars, which one is it going to be? The Last Jedi. Directed by Rian Johnson, starring a bunch of people that have been in the Star Wars movies. And I mean, some people wouldn't put this on a top 10,000 because they hate this movie, but I don't. I think it's a good Star Wars movie. I kind of wish he had directed the third one because it kind of wussed out on all the cool stuff that Rian Johnson had set up that angered a small vocal minority of fans. I think there was like the movie just kind of turned the Disney sequel trilogy on its head. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. I also enjoy the movie visually. Like of all three of the Disney era movies, this one has the strongest visuals in it of all of them, in my opinion, and the most interesting things happening within it. So that's why it lands as my number 419.
The Rise of Skywalker is such a retcon of Last Jedi that you can almost watch Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker and skip that middle one.
That movie is just, it's cold feet. They couldn't handle the pressure of people hating The Last Jedi when they could have turned some of those concepts and made them even more interesting and maybe at least gotten an interesting movie out of the last one. Instead, they just got something that nobody liked. The people who liked Last Jedi, the people who didn't, all agree that movie is not worthy of being the 9th film in a 9-film series.
No, not the capper to a...
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if they had stuck with the direction Last Jedi was headed, I think they would have gotten at least the people who liked Last Jedi to like the last one, and maybe could have pulled over some of the haters. Maybe not. Who cares if you don't bring them along? But Zach?
Okay, my 419, another bump, Force Majeure, which I think someone else already mentioned last episode. But I'm going to talk about my 248, Killer of Sheep. This is from 1978. It is so good. Oh my goodness. It's about a father and a husband who works at a slaughterhouse. And it's kind of like the drama with his family. The Library of Congress said it was a national treasure, and it's one of the first 50 films included in the National Film Registry. It is so rich, and it's all in black and white, even though it's from 78. And it's just very powerful film. Hard to describe what it's about. You just got to experience it. It's called Killer of Sheep, and it's my 248.
It's a short film, right?
It's an hour and 20. Yeah.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
pretty short.
Not crazy short, but
yeah.
It's feature length, but on the short end of that.
Right.
My number 419 is a 2021 movie. This is Stowaway, directed by Joe Penna. I believe we all reviewed this on the podcast.
Oh, I forgot Stowaway.
Stowaway, yeah.
Yeah.
This starring Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, Toni Collette, and Shamir Anderson, and only those 4 people are in this movie. The first 3 I named are astronauts who are on a mission to Mars on a very advanced but exact spaceship. And they discover that a 4th person, played by Shamir Anderson, is on this ship also. And they have to decide what to do on a ship designed for 3 people that now has a 4th person on it. And I like this movie. It both has space adventure and how do we solve the problem, but also has some psychological, sort of impossible conundrums of how do we solve this problem of survival when we have one more person than we need. I was bothered that the ship could take off in the first place with an extra person on there, but that's neither here nor there.
Sure.
I remember that being a really fun episode to discuss and review.
Oh yeah.
My number 418 is Tron from 1982, the Disney live action classic, one of the first movies to extensively use CGI as part of its special effects package. Although if you watch some of the making ofs, it's kind of impressive how much of it was practical, but to look like computer graphics or to match some of the computer graphics. I think the artistry behind that movie is kind of impressive. The story, I mean, it's kind of slow for today's standards. I'm not sure it holds up particularly well other than kind of as a time capsule of movie making at the time and the style of storytelling and those types of things. But I do enjoy it. And, when 1982, I was 5. So by the time I got around to this movie, I was the right age for it, for sure. So Tron's kind of always been in my life. Consider it one of my favorite films. And that's why it's at 418.
Nice. My 418 is another bump. It's Blowout. But my number 239, The Godfather Part 2, made the list. So I don't know why it wasn't on my top 400. I think I used to include it with The Godfather as The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. But since I haven't seen The Godfather Part 3, I decided to separate them out of my list.
Nice.
All right. My number 418 is a 2020 Spike Lee film, The Five Bloods. This is a story about 4 African-American Vietnam veterans who returned to Vietnam in search of something they left there, as well as trying to resolve some issues from their past. This is starring Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, Clark Peters, Norm Lewis, and one of the final performances from Chadwick Boseman also. This is definitely a messy film. It's got a lot going on, a lot of ideas. It's fairly violent, which I was surprised by. But it's still Spike Lee, and I still think Spike Lee is an amazing director. And even a messy Spike Lee movie is still a good Spike Lee movie. And Delroy Lindo returns an incredible performance. I think he was a big oversight of the Oscars this year, and he should definitely receive some recognition for his role in this movie, because he did an awesome job.
Yeah, Spike Lee movies, they're always interesting. They're not always good, but he rarely makes a movie that he doesn't have a take on it. You know what I mean? Like a unique take compared to what you'd expect. And I respect that about him. My number 417 is the romantic comedy, The Big Sick, starring Kumail Nanjiani and Zoe Kazan. And also has Ray Romano and Holly Hunter in it. And I mean, how to describe this other than romantic comedy? I don't know. I think it's smarter than your typical romantic comedy. Maybe not smarter, more charming, less trite or calculated, probably because it's based on a true story on some level, and has some kind of like cultural influences, or I don't know, just like the story, the way they tell it, I think is unique, even though some of the wrapper is a formula, and that worked for me. Big Sick, 417.
Cool. My 417 is another bump, Timbuktu. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 209, The Notebook, which is a movie I just hadn't seen for a long time. And then I saw it a few years ago, and I just love it. It's really great. I can't help it. The Notebook, it stars Rachel McAdams and what's his name? And it's great.
Ryan Gosling.
What's his name?
What's his name? My number 417 is a 2007 Spanish film. This is called Time Crimes. It is about a man who accidentally steps into a time machine.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder how does that happen? Watch the movie to find out. And has to start dealing with and he travels back in time 1 hour. So it's a very short time travel. And he has to start kind of deal with the consequences of what happens when you travel back in time only 1 hour. And now there are 2 of you existing within the same universe. And it is a very well executed time travel movie. That it feels like a puzzle, and it's cool to see all the pieces come together. And it is also in Spanish. So once again, deal with them subtitles.
I'm surprised this is not higher for you. I thought you liked it a lot more.
I'm surprised it is too. But, this list is, I'll redo this list of the year, and who knows where it'll end up.
Okay.
Just making the list itself is an honor.
My number 416, speaking of subtitles, is a foreign language documentary titled Mandabala, parentheses, Send a Bullet. And it's about corruption and kidnapping in Brazil. And this is the first documentary that I watched that is certainly like a traditionally told documentary, but also felt cinematic. Like they just like the documentaries that are made today, they all do it. But before Mandabala, I'm I'm no documentary historian, but Mandabala was the first movie that I saw, the first documentary that I saw where I was like, the B-roll that they're shooting feels like it's a part of telling the story, and it's super well shot. Like the cinematography in Mandabala is amazing. And the commentary on what was going on in Brazil in the mid to late 2000s is really scary for sure, as far as like what their political environment was like, their corruption environment. I'm seeing right on Wikipedia that the director said when making Mandabala, I really thought of Mandabala as a nonfiction RoboCop depicting a very real, broken,
Wow.
and violent society.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
All right.
I'm not going to say it's RoboCop-esque. It's probably more artfully made than RoboCop, to be honest. But it is a movie about a society in the throes of violence. And the subject is good, but the presentation puts it over the top for me. Mandabala.
Cool. All right. My next one, 416, is a bump. Won't You Be My Neighbor has kind of fallen in my esteem. But my 172, I think Kyle recommended I watch it. It's called Song of the Sea.
Oh, yeah.
From 2014. It made my top 200. I really loved this film. It's unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It's an animated film. It's Irish. It's magical realism. It's utterly beautiful and captivating. So, Song of the Sea, I recommend it to anyone. It's my 172.
That is a great movie, and I think especially a great movie to watch if you are a parent.
Which I happen to be.
Look at that. My number 416 is a James Cameron film from 1989. This is The Abyss. This is starring Ed Harris, Michael Biehn, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and other people. It is about an oil rig crew who has to go to the depths of the ocean to investigate something at the bottom of the ocean, and they find something weird, and things happen from there. So this is a sci-fi film, and it kind of feels like a good intersection for Cameron between, I mean, not Terminator, more the sci-fi part of Terminator plus Titanic. Mix those two together, or like take Aliens plus Titanic, mix them together, take out the crazy violence, and you got The Abyss.
It's a good one. My number 415, also a good one, Black Panther, the Marvel movie. What to say about this? I mean, it was a kind of a cultural phenomenon when it came out, made tons of money, and lots of people saw it, and rightfully so. I think it's definitely one of Marvel's best, and I wish we were getting more Chadwick Boseman Black Panther movies. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. We'll see where the sequel goes, but for now, I think this one is going to stand the test of time as a Marvel Cinematic Universe classic. Maybe not classic in the big picture, but certainly when talking about comic book films, and specifically Marvel, this one will always rank fairly high. My number 415.
Cool. My number 415 is a movie that James recommended I watch, and it's called
Rat Patrol.
Somewhere. It's called Somewhere.
Okay.
From 2010. And I think this is the bingo from last episode. It's directed by Sofia Coppola and also written by her. And it's hard to describe why I liked this movie so much, actually. But I did. I really liked it a lot. And I loved the ending. I loved the journey getting there. I loved the relationship between the father and the daughter. It's a very simple, understated film. That's like just it's more than the sum of its parts, and it's great. So Somewhere is my number 415.
It's nearly a plotless movie, and that's hard. Plotless and interesting is a hard mix to pull off, in my opinion.
My number 415 is the only instance you're going to see this instance of this kind of movie you're going to see on this list, and that is a Italian neo-realism movie directed by Fellini. I know. There's a lot of words to get out there. This is La Dolce Vita from 1960. And this is one of the few Italian era movies of this era that I actually enjoy. Most of these style movies I do not care for. I don't care for their use of non-actors. I don't care for their kind of normal approach to life. And I find them often very boring. But the Dolce Vita, I did not find boring whatsoever. This movie I found rather captivating. It is the story of a journalist who is trying to essentially like find love in Rome. And this isn't an episodic movie. It takes place over multiple days and nights, and sort of each day or night something else happens as, you know, that affects his life. One of the most memorable ones, and it's kind of the most famous ones on the poster, is he dances with a woman in a fountain. That woman's played by Anita Ekberg, and she is absolutely gorgeous. It's I don't know, I think a very watchable movie and a good entry into that whole Italian neo-realism look. It is also the movie that got us the word paparazzi. Because there is a photographer in this movie, and his character's name is Paparazzo, and he's constantly trying to take pictures of celebrities. And that character is then what led us to the term paparazzi for celebrity photographers.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. My number 414 is a movie that it's a documentary, another documentary that I definitely like more than Kyle does, because it's higher on my list than his. It's Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. Which is...
That's a bingo.
A bingo.
That's
for
a bingo.
sure. And I also have it on 4K.
There's nothing quite like the crystal clear picture quality of Blu-ray.
Actually, that Heart of Darkness documentary is only on Blu-ray, not on 4K.
Right. You're right. I don't own it on 4K. I own it.
I don't think anyone
4K.
owns it on 4K yet.
I own it with the 4K.
With the 4K.
It
Thank
came
you.
with my 4K. So I only own it on Blu-ray, which was
Yeah, these are definitely a buy.
definitely a buy. My number 414.
All right.
I don't even know what movie you're talking about. There's so many sound clips in that review.
Lovely. My 414 is Bump Cretia. Good movie, Kyle. You should see it.
All right.
But my 166 is The Vast of Night. This is a movie that came out in 2019 that I just fell in love with. It's a sci-fi film that's mostly just a telephone operator's switchboard procedural, and I just love this film. I think it's really great. So The Vast of Night, my 166.
It's also a walking procedural.
Yeah, there's some walking.
Yeah.
Some heavy walking.
A lot.
It's great.
Yeah. My number 414 is a bingo from last episode. This is Barton Fink, the Coen Brothers movie.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Starring John Turturro as this is a movie about writing a movie. John Turturro is the film writer in this movie. And then he's also being helped/hounded by John Goodman. For me, there's a standout scene where they're in a hotel, the walls are on fire, and John Goodman is marching down this hotel hallway amongst the burning walls, holding a shotgun, shouting something or another. And that's just the iconic shot of this movie for me.
My number 413 is Life of Pi from 2012. An Ang Lee movie about a guy stuck on a raft with a lion. I think it was a lion,
Tiger.
right? Tiger.
Tiger.
The tiger. I knew that was wrong the moment I said it. Yeah, I mean, I think this movie's great. I mean, the movie itself is great. I don't like that the people who made the special effects for it like weren't paid, essentially, which is bullcrap. And meanwhile, the movie went on to like win a special effects Oscar. And the special effects is not the entire movie, but it's certainly central to the movie. You needed special effects in order to believe that a guy was on a raft existing with a tiger. And putting all that aside, I think it's a strong effort from Ang Lee and good performances and great effects. Life of Pi, 413.
My 413 is another bump. It's M. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 161, Emma from 2020. I just thought this was such a good translation of Emma, the famous story. And yeah, I don't know. Right now, I really like the costumes from Emma.
My number 413 is a Kurosawa film. This is Throne of Blood from 1957.
Great choice.
And this is, thank you, this is his take on the Macbeth story. This is both a good samurai film and a good Shakespeare adaptation. So it's, I feel like either of those things, check out Throne of Blood.
One of the 3 Kurosawa films I've seen. I like it as well. My number 412 is Pacific Rim from 2013, a movie that somehow I gave 5 stars the first time I watched it, and I still enjoy it. I'm not sure it would still hold up as a 5-star movie, but there was something about this on first watch that I really dug. That's for sure. Directed by Guillermo del Toro, and it's a giant robot kaiju movie with, I don't know. It's really not even that interesting a movie. It just absolutely worked. I remember when I walked out of the theater, like my eyeballs hurt because it's just so visually in your face, this movie was. And yeah, 412.
That movie is full of cliches,
Mhm.
yet somehow it works just because it's so much fun.
Yeah. Disappointing sequel, but you know, they can't all
Yeah.
be winners.
All right, my 412 is a bump, small change. So instead, I'm going to talk about 159, which is a bingo, Honeyland.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just
bingo.
we've talked about it so much on the podcast, but if you haven't seen Honeyland, you need to see Honeyland. It's a almost perfect documentary, and it's great. So that's why it's my 159.
My 412 is a 1976 movie directed by Sidney Lumet, Network. In this movie, Peter Finch plays a broadcaster who kind of loses his mind. He gives this famous speech. This movie's full of famous speeches. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. He threatens to kill himself on air. And instead of the network executives, played by Faye Dunaway, shutting him down, they're like, we can profit off this. Let's keep him on the air and see where this all goes. And this movie is a very cynical look at TV and ratings and punditry, and is kind of a bellwether to where we are now when you look at especially cable news and entertainment news. So I think if you're really hooked into media, this is worth checking out. It's also a good movie. And you've got Ned Beatty gives an incredibly famous speech. You're messing with the forces of nature is a great speech and a iconic movie line and scene. Or meddling with the forces of nature. I can't remember the exact line.
It's iconic. You can't remember it?
Well, I mean, Ned Beatty can say it much better than I ever could.
Okay. Sounds good. My number 411 is another documentary. This one fairly new, just a few years ago. Love, and Tasha, which is a documentary about Anton Yelchin, who passed away a few years ago due to a car accident, slow-moving car accident. And it's really good. I've talked about it recently, probably too much, but Anton Yelchin, an actor that I liked just fine in movies, wasn't, my favorite or guy that I needed to see every movie from, who turns out to be far more interesting when you kind of pull back the curtain and get to know him. And movie was made as a love letter by friends of his, using a bunch of the footage that he shot himself while he was alive. And he documented a lot of his life. He grew up in an age when cameras were more available to people. And yeah, it's just really well made and affecting, and makes you wonder what other stories never get told about interesting people. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. Love and Tasha.
Cool. My 411, Never Let Me Go, is a bump. So I'm going to talk about my 147, a documentary, The Barkley Marathons, The Race That Eats Its Young. And this is a great documentary about a great subject. It's about this almost impossible race, foot race, that there's only been 10 people who have even finished the race in the past 25 years. And it's just an incredibly hard and brutal, enduring race. And it's about the people who compete in it. And it's so fascinating to watch and fun to watch. And I just really, really like this documentary. So it's called The Barkley Marathons, The Race That Eats Its Young. It's from 2014.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. That's the line. I really needed to figure that out. Moving on. My 411 is a Werner Herzog documentary from 2010, Cave of Forgotten Dreams. This is about the Chauvet Caves in southern France, which has some of the oldest known pictures created by humans or human-like creatures ever. This is a cave that is pretty much closed to the public because the pictures on the walls are so fragile that just having people breathe and bring their moisture into that cave can deteriorate them. But Herzog was given permission to film in these caves and make a documentary about them, and it's amazing. It's a part of the world that is nearly impossible to see. So the fact that we can at least experience it on film is something I appreciate in itself, and it's not as dark as other Herzog documentaries are. It's a little bit more uplifting than some of his other takes on the humankind.
I'm sure there were others, but when that movie first came out, it was screened in 3D, and I have not seen it, but I imagine just from descriptions of it, it would have been amazing in 3D.
I hear that's the way to see it, but
yeah,
unless it gets like a re-release or something like that, I'm not sure how.
I don't know. Are 3D movies still a thing ever? Like even the Marvel movies aren't coming out in 3D these days, right?
Yeah, I don't
know.
I think they realized instead of just charging premium for 3D, let's just charge a premium on everything.
Right. Let's just bump the price on everything.
Let's bump the price up in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of. Right. There was a time when like every big budget action movie had a 3D release, and maybe with theaters just being so anemic anyway, they're like, we're not going to try and fight for the dollar. Let's just put the movie out.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it was dying. Like it was only it went from like every big budget movie to select big budget movies. And then the pandemic happened. And even though we've started to get new release movies, none of them have 3D versions. Like even the biggest of the big don't have 3D versions.
Well, because even I know at my local theaters, the big movies are playing on 2 screens.
Really?
Like it used to be the multiplex would have, 4, like No Time to Die would be on 4 or 5 screens.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to go see it, it was on 2. So if you're only putting movies on 2 screens, you're not going to dedicate one just to 3D.
Yeah, that makes sense. My number 410 is another documentary, this one titled The Wolf Pack, which is great. It's about these brothers who live with their parents, and they only experience life through watching movies, basically. You're not really allowed outside or to interact with other kids. They're allowed to like be in their home, and like are their parents agoraphobic or something? I don't remember exactly what the framing device of the kids in the Wolfpack is, but they live life through like Tarantino movies and stuff like that. Like that's how they relate to the world. And then of course, as they become teenagers, that becomes harder to control, right? They want to go to school, they want to meet girls, they want to go outside. And so the parents have a harder time keeping control of them. And it's a documentary, and it's good. The Wolfpack.
Cool. My 410 is Zardoz from 1974. This is a John Boorman film, and it stars Sean Connery. And it is just unlike any other movie. And I just really appreciate the uniqueness and the creativity and the schlockiness of the film. So Zardoz is my 410.
My 410 is a 1965 film directed by Jean-Luc Godard. This is Alphaville. I think I talked about this several months ago. It is the story of a private eye who's sent to Alphaville, which is this futuristic city on another planet, to investigate like an evil computer. It sounds silly because this movie is actually a satire of noir and sci-fi films, but you don't really know that going into it. But as you watch it, you realize like, oh, this is all kind of poking fun at that whole genre. It's sort of Jean-Luc Godard's take on like, what if I made a sci-fi noir film where I stripped away all the pretense of it and just presented it as starkly as possible. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think if you go into it knowing what it's going for, you'll enjoy it even more.
What was the name of that?
Alphaville.
Alphaville.
And
Definitely, so they don't want to see.
Yeah, definitely see it. It's in French, so you know what you got to do.
Watch a movie in French.
Watch it in French.
Deal with them subtitles.
Oh, okay. My number 409 is the last documentary for this episode for me. I don't know how I got 3 stacked on each other, but I did. This is Paris is Burning from 1990. So good. Paris is Burning chronicles the late 80s drag queen voguing scene in New York City. And if that sounds like a foreign country to you, it was to me as well. And I really enjoyed getting to know the people in that scene and getting to know what they like in life, what their challenges are in life, as well as just getting to see people have fun being themselves and expressing their creativity in ways that I just didn't know existed in the 80s for sure. I lived a very different existence than the people who are captured in Paris is Burning during that time period. And it's just cool to know that these kind of subcultures existed and that people certainly didn't have a easy time in that time as depicted in this movie, but that they found places to belong. And yeah, Paris is Burning is awesome and very stylishly made. Great movie that everyone should check out. Paris is Burning, my 409.
Yeah, Paris is Burning is great. Okay, my 409 is a Faust silent film. And so instead I'm going to talk about my 123, Citizen Kane. Now, Citizen Kane is a movie that I never thought I'd put on a favorites list because I didn't really enjoy it that much. But this last rewatch where we did it for the show, when we reviewed Mank, I enjoyed it so much more than I ever had. And I feel like I finally got what people who really care about Citizen Kane, the reason that they do. And so I really enjoyed it this last time enough to put it at my number 123.
It's all about the fireplace.
Am I the only one that has Citizen Kane in their top 500?
I don't believe I do.
It might be in my. I don't want to go search it right now. It's not. It's not going to be on this list, but could be a little higher than 500 to 400.
Okay. Gotcha.
There's no movie in my top 500 with the word citizen in it.
Okay.
Oh, same here. I guess I did not rank it. Interesting.
Okay.
Well, there you go. My 409 is a bingo from last episode. This is Palm Springs from 2020, starring Andy Samberg, Kristen Milotti, and J.K. Simmons. This is a time loop movie similar to Groundhog Day, but instead of having one person trapped in the loop, you've got two, this case being Andy Samberg and Kristen Milotti. And it was the perfect movie to watch at the beginning of the pandemic. This came out shortly after the pandemic started, when we all felt like we were living the same day over and over anyway. And this movie just sort of, I think, will define. This will be a pandemic defining movie.
I don't know how we did it, Kyle, but my number 408 is Palm Springs.
Oh, we are one off from a super bingo.
one off.
Wow.
Which is crazy to me. It's still a normal bingo,
That's a bingo.
but not a super bingo.
Wow.
And,
That's so
wow.
close.
so close. But
And a trifecta. It's in all 3 lists.
okay. So
Yeah,
that makes
it was yours last week, right, Zach?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that makes it a triple bingo.
That's a bingo.
Is it the only one that's been on all 3 in this, 100 movie span?
Section. I don't know. Did you both have The Gods Must Be Crazy in your list?
No.
Right, but like somewhere between 400 and 500. I mean, is there
Yeah.
another movie where it spans all 3 of us? I don't know.
This might
I
be
don't think
our
so.
only triple bingo.
Right. Not much to add about Palm Springs other than if you like Groundhog Day, you will probably get a kick out of Palm Springs.
Can we say that this is the movie we agree the most on?
Of all movies? No.
I think
of
there
all
are
movies.
ones where
No.
all 3 of us share that are higher.
That's true. Okay. True. Like I said, Back to the Future.
Right.
Children of Men.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders.
I'm sure there are a few. In
Okay.
there.
Can we say that besides like absolute favorites, this is one of the movies we agree the most on?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Who knows? Who knows?
I don't know either.
We have a whole list for this. Okay. My 408 is another bump, Captain America Civil War. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 118, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, this might get a little recency bump, maybe if I remake this list a year from now, it'll be lower. But right now, I'm just excited about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I thought it was such a fun and well-shot Marvel movie. So that it made it all the way up to 118.
Nice. Kyle?
Oh, sorry. Zach's talking about like top 100 movies now. I am so lost where we are.
Kyle, just go down the list. Yours are in order.
I know.
I'm the
just,
one that should get confused.
like, you're at 118. I'm like, where are we? Where are we? We are at 408 for me.
Yeah, just whatever the last movie is.
That is Predator from 1987. I think I talked about this actually 2 weeks ago when we did our top 10 movies we wanted to talk about. Predator and its spiritual cousin, Full Metal Jacket. But this is a fun 80s action movie directed by John McTiernan, same guy who directed Last Action Hero as well as Die Hard. It's a quintessential Arnold Schwarzenegger movie about him in the jungle fighting an alien, and it's fun.
Nice. My number 407 is Gus Van Sant's My Own Private Idaho. Good movie starring River Phoenix and Keanu Reeves. And what to say about this? I don't know. I enjoyed it. The end.
Nice.
I enjoyed it. Great review.
All right. My 407 is another bump, Rachel getting married. So instead, I'm going to talk about this bingo at 110, Black Bear. And I actually don't have much to add to Kyle's review of Black Bear. It's just really trippy and great and showcases Audrey Plaza really well.
My number 407 is another Spike Lee movie. This is Inside Man from 2006. And this is a heist movie starring Denzel Washington, Clive Owen, Jodie Foster, Christopher Plummer, Willem Dafoe, and Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Carl?
I would say we were talking earlier about Spike Lee always has a point of view. And this is probably the least Spike Lee-y movie of the ones that I've seen of his. It's probably the most straightforward, but there are still those Spike Lee touches to it. So it's probably his most accessible movie of everything he's made.
Okay.
My number 406 is Lean on Pete, another horse movie. It's
You
great.
love them horse movies.
I mean, horse movies, there's just something about them that I can't put my finger on that is a commonality.
Is it the horses?
What?
Is it the horses?
Couldn't be that.
I think you're secretly a horse girl on the inside.
Maybe that's possible.
Why can't he be a horse guy?
I do enjoy Black Beauty as well. Like
Yeah.
all iterations of it.
Me too.
James
Those
the
are
horse
great.
girl.
Right.
What?
Zach's a poser horse movie lover.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You haven't even seen Lean on Peter the Rider. You can't say you're a horse movie person
no.
unless you.
I absolutely
seen
can.
those.
Sorry if I don't have time for the new class. I'm still enjoying the classics.
Okay. Being the classic Black Beauty, you got the one.
No, there's like four
There's like
different
four
classic
versions of
Black
Black
Beauties.
Beauty.
I know you said there's so many.
Yeah,
What about Black
They're all
Stallion?
great.
That's a deep cut
That's a
right
good
there.
one,
that's good
too.
too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, so this movie stars Steve Buscemi, Charlie Plummer, Chloe Sevigny. This 15-year-old kid wants to rescue an ailing racehorse and does, and then goes on an adventure with this horse. Like how is a 15-year-old kid who has no money going to take care of and transport a horse a long distance? It's a little bit of a road movie, a little bit of a chase movie, a little bit of a relationship movie. It's really good, and it should be watched immediately. My number 406, Lean on Pete.
Okay, my number 406 is Tangerine from 2015. This is directed by Sean Baker, written by Sean Baker and Chris Burgo, and it's so good. It has no right to be this good. It's entirely shot on iPhones, but has so much momentum and to it, and it's just awesome. It's the story of like two sex workers in Los Angeles that are on the search for someone, and it just has so much movement to it, and it just it's got a great pace, and I really, really like Tangerine.
Not just iPhones, like iPhone 8s or something like that.
Yeah.
Old iPhones.
Old iPhones.
Sean Baker's so good. Like Florida Project, it just grows. I haven't rewatched it, but like the esteem in my brain just grows and grows and grows for that movie. Have you seen the trailer for his next one?
No.
Just came out like a little while back.
What's it about?
Don't remember, but it seems a little more traditionally told than Tangerine.
Red Rocket.
And what?
Red Rocket.
Yes. Yeah. Seems a little bigger budget too. Not huge budget, but bigger budget.
Okay.
Now
I think
he
it has
has
a major actor in it.
$2
Right?
million.
Are you looking at it right now, Zach?
I am. Simon Rex is the lead.
Yes. He's not a major actor, but that's what I meant. He's a fairly well-known rapper who was somewhat famous in the mid-aughts.
Okay.
I think he used to be a porn star before he was a rapper.
Okay.
That's where I recognize him.
From his
That's joking.
early days,
His early days.
video entertainment.
All right, we'll leave that there. Is it my turn?
It's absolutely
yeah.
your turn.
Okay. My number 406 is Fantasia from 1940. This is the Disney film, which is a mashup of classical orchestral music with animation, where Disney was trying to bring sound to the visual sphere. And I mean, it's a classic. I mean, I think we all know Fantasia for at least Mickey Mouse and the Brooms, but there's also the ballet Hippos and Gators. There's the fairies dancing on the water. There's the Night at Bald Mountain with the demon coming out of the volcano. There are some iconic and great moments from Fantasia. And I attribute this for being an early movie that got me interested in music.
Nice. Awesome. My number 405 is Atonement from 2007, directed by Joe Wright. Such a great movie. I really enjoy Atonement. Early performances from a bunch of people, including what's her name? Zach's
Saoirse Ronan.
Carrie Mulligan, I believe.
Oh,
Wasn't
Carey
it like
Mulligan.
her very first film or something like that? Didn't we learn that recently? Like her first feature length film or something like that.
No. That was Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, well, also directed by Joe Wright. Maybe that's what I'm confusing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Atonement's awesome, and Joe Wright, pretty good in his own. It still baffles me how this guy made Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, Hannah, even The Darkest Hour is good, and he also made Pan. It just does not make any sense to me, but such is life.
Didn't he also do Woman in the Window?
I don't think so, but maybe.
Yeah, who directed Woman in the Window? I thought that was Joe Wright.
He did direct Woman in the
Oh, that
Window.
was
So he's had
trash.
2 not great movies. Woman in the Window, to me, I didn't hate that movie. I know you dislike it, but I did not hate that movie. Pan is insanity.
Insanity?
Insanity.
Did Woman in the Window need more or less Nirvana?
More.
More, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My 405 is a bump. It's Molly's Game. So instead, I'm going to talk about my 103. It almost made my top 100. Again, probably recency effect. I'm sure it'll go lower later on, but it's Bo Burnham's Inside, which
Wow.
Kyle and I watched together. But I think one, it showcases an incredible talent, not just for songwriting, but for lighting. I was very impressed by the creativity of his lighting. But then also, I think he struck this cultural moment, and he describes a certain part of our cultural moment just about better than anyone is doing right now. And that is impressive to me. And so that's why he made it all the way up to 103 for now.
Great. My number 405 is a sequel bingo. And this is Star Wars: The Force Awakens, directed by J.J. Abrams. This is my second favorite of the newest trilogy. And I think this movie does a pretty good job of setting up our new universe or our new storyline, where you give all the characters, you kind of establish the order of things. There's definitely some parallels plot-wise to Episode 4, A New Hope. That's totally fine. It does a great job of laying the groundwork and got me excited for Star Wars again. And I think Rian Johnson did a great job of picking up that groundwork and running with it. And we already had that discussion. So number 405, Star Wars: Force Awakens.
Sorry, did you
That's
say
404.
Rian Johnson?
Or 405, yeah.
I did. Because, I said Rihanna, and you guys all corrected me, so it must be Rian. I mean, make your minds up, people.
Rian Johnson. That's great.
It's late and I'm tired.
All right.
That's okay, man. No shame.
Hey, I accept that explanation.
That works.
My 404, it doesn't exist. It's a 404. Don't have a movie in that spot. No, I do. The
Oh,
aforementioned
my goodness.
Waves, which is
Ooh.
great. Waves is awesome.
Bingo.
It'll probably move up over time, but I tend not to move these things too fast. And Waves I've only seen twice, and I need more time with it before I'm gonna fully commit to it moving a lot high. It'll probably move a lot when it moves, but right now it sits at 404.
That's awesome. Okay, my next 3 movies are all bumps because these 3 broke into my top 100.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start with 404. It was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but now into my top 100 at number 95 is 1917. Kyle's favorite because of its it was all one shot, long shot.
I don't
No
hate
stitches.
1917. It's a 4-star movie. I just think I think the gimmick was unnecessary. That's my take on
I gotcha.
1917.
Well, I was into the gimmick and pretty much everything else about that movie. That's why I made my top 100.
Nice.
Well, Zach over here gets to talk about top 100 movies, where I'm still stuck at 404.
Sorry, man. You should have did you change your top 100 at all?
A little bit, but I didn't bump out a top 100 movie to the 400s.
I mean, has any movie entered your top 100 after making this list?
Yeah. But I'm not talking about top 100. I talk about my number 401 through 500. So is James.
Gotcha. I'm talking about my top 500 favorite films.
Sure.
Well, in that case, I got another 100 I ranked, so I'm going to run through those really quick for the next hour. So everyone hold on. I'm done with Zach bending the rules. All right. My number 404 is Airplane! From 1980. This is a Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker movie. This is a parody of disaster films from the 70s. Not a movies that I saw, but movies I can appreciate at least. And this is it's a comedy. This is like a laugh-a-minute comedy where they're throwing jokes after jokes after jokes. Some stick, some don't. Some are iconic, some are forgotten. But it's just a fun, good time. And you also got a good Leslie Nielsen performance, who's playing it straight, and then realized I can play it straight in comedic movies, and people will love that. So, birth of his new career in this movie.
My number 403 is The Lighthouse from just a few years ago. And it's great. Great movie. Along with Waves, this one is top of my list a few years ago. With a few more rewatches, I'm sure it will move up rapidly, but I need to give it a little distance, I need to let the hype die down a little bit before I see exactly where it lands in the list. Right now, hype just a little too high for Waves and The Lighthouse, so due for a reevaluation at some point. My number 403.
That's awesome. My 403 is Swing Time, because breaking into my top 100 at 92 is The Green Knight, which I just am really enthusiastic about. I like that movie quite a bit. We've talked about it recently.
My number 403 is a Ron Howard movie from 2013. This is Rush. It is the true story about two Formula One drivers in the 70s, played by Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl, I believe how I pronounce his last name. And they have a rivalry where Chris Hemsworth is the kind of cocky, talented driver. He's the playboy, where Daniel Bruhl is the much more calculated and methodical driver. And because of that, he is not well regarded within the public sphere, because he doesn't have that charm that Chris Hemsworth carries. And this is a good Ron Howard movie. It's a movie that I'm not sure why I watched it. I think it was recommended to me, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it.
It's a good one. I think I need to rewatch it. It's a Ron Howard movie, right?
It is a Ron Howard movie, yes.
Yeah. That's why I need to rewatch it. We are at 402, just two more.
It's not a tumor.
And my number 402 is Burning from 2018. It's a drama with a little bit of thriller elements, slow burn drama thriller, I would say. It stars Steven Yeun amongst other people. It's actually like a what do you call it when there's like three characters? It's a love triangle movie basically, between these three characters. And Steven Yeun would probably be the only one that most American audiences would recognize. He's the guy from Walking Dead. And Burning is really good and really underseen and not talked about much, and will probably move up my list over time as I live more with Burning. Such a great movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm surprised it's so low, but just because you have a lot of great movies above it, I'm sure. Okay, my 402 is 12 Angry Men, but it's a bump because my highest film that is new to this list, my top 500, is at number 71, and it's called Shall We Kiss? And I don't think that I've ever talked about it on the show before. It is a short film, actually. It's 6 minutes long. And previously, I only included feature-length films on this list, but I had to include this one, even though it's a short film, because I just love it so much. It's on YouTube. If you Google Shall We Kiss on YouTube, I think this is the first thing that pops up. And if you speak French, the second thing that pops up is it in higher definition. So watch that. But if you need subtitles, it's the first thing that pops up. And it's just this 6 minute short film about a girl in her 20s that is going to an audition, and she stops at a coffee shop and meets a stranger and asks the stranger if he will help her practice her lines by just reading the other side of her lines. And so she does it. She's fine. And he gives her some suggestions about how to improve. And she gets better and better at the audition. And I just think it's one of the best acting performances I've seen in a film in support of the plot. It's so good. And I'm in through the moon for it. It's my favorite short film. That's why it's my number 71. It's called Shall We Kiss? I forget what it's called in French, but yeah. And that is the highest new addition to my top 500. The next film I talk about will actually be my 401.
Nice.
I believe it's called L'Embrasse, like the kiss in French.
Yeah, I just didn't know how to pronounce it.
Okay.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, L'Embrasse. Okay. Yep. Well, my number 402 is bumped up on my 64, which is a reaction video to an SNL skit.
I want to hear more. Tell me more.
No. I'm going to talk about my actual top 400 or 400 to 500. And that is The Parent Trap. This is the original version from 1961. This was a kid favorite of mine. We had Disney Channel, and it was on Disney Channel all the time when I was a kid. So I used to watch it a bunch, and then kind of forgot about this movie and revisited it a couple years ago, and it still holds up. I mean, it's definitely some nostalgia playing into it. It's a good movie though. It's starring Haley Mills. She plays twins who are separated at birth. One twin goes to live with the mother, the other with the father. They end up at the same summer camp and then switch places to try and get their parents get to know the parent they don't know and get them back together. And it's a fun movie. Hey, this could be apocryphal, but legend has it that Haley Mills was considered for Lolita, the Stanley Kubrick movie.
She confirmed it.
She did?
I just watched I just listened to an interview with her 2 days ago where she talks about that.
Perfect.
Disney didn't want her to do it.
Exactly.
And she was under contract.
Walt Disney was like, Haley Mills is not starring in Lolita.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
Almost had that.
I love original Parent Trap for sure. It's a classic.
Yeah.
My number 4. Have you looked into what happened to the guy who played the father in that movie?
Brian Keith? No.
Yep. You want to be really depressed, just read about what happened to that guy.
All right. Well,
401
jump in.
Sound of Metal. Another recent favorite that will probably move up over time. But right now it sits at 401. Great movie we talked about at length about a year ago. And it's about a drummer who loses his hearing, and drumming is his life, man. And so he resists the idea that life's going to change for him. And he's also an recovering addict. And, drumming has kind of helped him keep on the straight and narrow. And so when it's taken away from him, amongst other things that are taken away from him, what happens to a guy like that? And Sound of Metal, well acted, well executed, great movie. My number 401.
Cool. And my 401 is I, Tanya, which might be a bingo with one of you, I think.
I don't know.
But it's the kind of fictionalized retelling of what happened with Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan. And I just think it's super well done, and it could have not been well done. It could have been bad, but it was great. And a lot of characters, including like supporting cast, is really, really good. And it's a lot of fun, and I like it a lot. And it humanized Tanya Harding in a way that I think little else could have. So
I have I, Tanya at 327.
Yeah, and I have it at 217.
So bingo in the sense that it's all in our top 500s. But
later we should compile our 3 500 lists and see how many overlapped movies there are.
Sure.
Could do that.
I definitely had some move arounds here and there. Nothing major for sure. Probably the only one worth mentioning is that La La Land, unsurprisingly, continues to climb my chart and has entered the top 10 favorite films of all time for me.
What did it bump out? What's number 11?
Moon. It bumped out Moon.
You like it better than Moon.
Yeah. Moon, I think I still love. It's still a top. Where did Moon land? Moon landed at 25. So it has dropped. And I think part of that is that I've watched it enough that it's not that I don't like it. It's just I'm not sure like double-digit rewatches of Moon are going to make it better in the long run.
Sure.
And I'm not quite at double-digit rewatches of Moon, but it's got to be 7 or 8 with Moon. And the last time I watched it, I have to admit that it is hard for me to hear what's his name's voice be the computer. Like it's distracting to me. And it's a shame that tarnishes a movie that I love, but it's a fact of life at this point. And La La Land, I've seen 6 times officially, and more times than that, I imagine. I just forgot to log it. And it's a movie that just fills me with joy every time I watch it. And that's why it continues to make the ranks. Kyle, are there any on your top 400 that you want to quickly stump for? You just want to scan or?
Well, I'd like to actually finish my list.
Oh, you could do that.
You want to do 1 through 400?
I figured when I said 401, said 401, that meant end of the show. So I was just ending it. Kyle, what's your 401?
I'm not gonna tell you. No, my 401 is
I jumped you in the list.
No, you went, then I went, and then you started talking.
And then
again.
I jumped in and finished the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kyle.
It's quite all right. Quite all right. My 401 is a movie I've actually talked about on this podcast several times. This is a documentary from 2002. It's called Standing in the Shadows of Motown. This is about the house musicians for the Motown record company. I think they're called the Funk Brothers. And they were the backing musicians on hundreds of hits. But got no credit because they were just the studio musicians. So this documentary finally shines the spotlight on them, and it's part documentary about like what they were doing in the 60s and 70s with the Motown label, and then it's also part concert footage of the surviving members getting back together in 2002 and performing the songs they're famous for with current musicians singing the lead part. So you get a little bit of both worlds. And if you like music, especially if you like Motown and that era of music, this is definitely worth checking out and learning a little bit of history.
I think you've mentioned this one before, and I definitely need to move it up. It seems like it would be an easy watch with great music.
It is, and you probably don't even have to be watching it.
Really, you can kind of listen to it as a soundscape.
Right, well, because it's part talking heads and part performances, so there's not a lot visually going on.
But a very musically motivated movie.
Exactly. Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Nice. What was that movie we watched about the music festival this year?
Woodstock?
No. The one
Summer of
that
Soul?
was like the counter Woodstock that was held in New York.
Summer of Soul.
Summer of Soul.
Summer of Soul. Yeah.
That was another one you probably could have just listened to, but the visuals were pretty fun.
Yeah, and that one was so much about here's footage people have never seen before.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Shadows of Motown is a more traditional documentary in that sense, but still interesting topic.
Yeah, on Wikipedia they're saying the Funk Brothers produced more hits than the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, and Elvis Presley combined.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Like, take your favorite Motown song, they played on it.
I got to check this out. At one point, a friend of my parents had a CD that was like the top 25 hits of Motown or something like that. It was like a compilation CD.
Mhm.
And the only artist I recognized at the time on it was the Jackson 5. I think ABC was on it or something,
yeah.
One of their earlier hits. And I just remember constantly listening to that song. And then one day, like that was like the first song on the CD. One day I just let the next one play and then the next one. And I was like, this is amazing. And to this day, I still have a ripped copy of the top 25 Motown hits. And if I'm tired of whatever I'm listening to, I will pop that on any day. And some of those artists I've explored deeper and others, it's just that one song that I've ever heard from them. But such a cool sound from that era.
Is it
That's
on like
great.
an old CDR you burned?
No, I mean, I have a ripped MP3
Oh,
that
okay.
I've uploaded to YouTube Music, which has a music locker service if you own the music. So.
You know, I confused my 90s, 2000 terms between ripped and burned. Those are two different things. And I
Sure.
apologize to me 20
No,
years ago.
I legally own the CD.
Okay.
I did not pirate it. Well, I mean, I was given it. That's still legal, right? People give you things and then you own it.
Yeah. Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Sure. So it's 9/10 legal.
Yeah. It's mostly legal.
Mostly legal.
Wait, was it given to you like a real CD or given to you as a rip CD?
A real CD.
Okay,
It's a
then
real
yeah,
CD. Yep.
yeah, totally legal.
All right. That's everybody, right? Everybody went through. Are there any additional movies, Kyle, that you'd like to speak about that feel like they've moved around?
Oh, you know, let's see what popped into top 100.
Okay.
Let me take a look here.
We've gone through like 30 or 40 movies of your top 100. Does that change the list?
Yes. So actually, if you've listened to the Patreons, I'm going to add two new ones because they did not make the list at the time.
Okay.
So the first one, actually, I bumped this in at 101. It just barely made the cut. And this is Eddie Murphy Delirious, which is the stand-up special where he's wearing the red jumpsuit.
Mm-hmm.
I find this hilarious. I illegally downloaded a video of this in college.
Sure.
And I watched it all the time, and I tried to get my friends to watch it, and they're like, what is this? Because it's raunchy. There are definitely some jokes which do not hold up today. like not because they're cringy. You're like, oh, this is just like not even funny in that aspect.
It's just
Thankfully,
wrong.
this is wrong. Or, you know, it's sort of like a you know, I mean, it's Eddie Murphy. All his jokes are raunchy to an extent, but you know, it's one thing when he's talking like racial politics, another thing when he's talking sexual politics.
Sure.
Thankfully, those are mostly at the beginning, and then once you get kind of into those as it goes on, it's hilarious. So I actually found this on DVD because there's no Blu-ray release of it. I do own it, and it cracks me up every single time. And then keeping the Spike Lee thing going on, when we did our top 10 directors, I did not include Spike Lee, and that was a mistake on my part because he is definitely a top 10 director for me. And coming in at number 95 is Do the Right Thing. I watched it last summer, so we were in the middle of a pandemic. It was hot. George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matters was all over the news. And Do the Right Thing seemed like the right movie to watch at that time. It just seemed like that movie spoke to that moment. And it's incredible. You watch Do the Right Thing and you realize that Black artists were telling us about this 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yes, the rest of America finally realized what was going on, but this is not a new thing at all. Like this has been going on for a long time, even longer than 30 years. It was fascinating to watch it Do the Right Thing and to see so many parallels between the story that Spike Lee was telling in 1988 versus the story that we were seeing play out in live TV in 2020. And it holds up super well. I think everyone should watch it. And I'll have my mea culpa and say that Spike Lee is a top 10 director for me. So sorry, someone else, you're getting bumped off the list. Spike Lee, you're on.
Nice. That's a movie I've only seen once, and I need to rewatch it for sure. Spike Lee
I
is
think
one
you'll
of
get
those
a lot out of
directors-
it on the second rewatch.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Spike Lee is one of those directors that I absolutely should make time to finish out the movies that I haven't seen, because I think I'm like a good 70% of the way there anyway. And so 5 or 6 movies, and I'd have seen his whole filmography.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's close enough that it's probably a worthy pursuit. And some of them are like lesser known, but like Chirac is a movie that was very well spoken of in the year that it was released. So I just never got to it. And I absolutely should get to that one at some point. There's a
I
couple
need to
others,
see his Old Boy remake.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah,
I don't think you'd hate it.
I don't think so.
It won't compare to the original, but as long as you go into it knowing that, you should be fine.
I think I saw Old Boy shortly before the remake came out, the original. So I just needed some distance between the two. And I'm sure that distance has now happened.
Yeah. It's different enough that it's its own movie, but I like it too.
Yeah.
The final big change on my top 100 is I swapped my 2 and 3.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a big change.
Children of Men was number 2. It fell to number 3. And Apocalypse Now, that sits at number 2. And I feel real good about that decision.
Apocalypse Now got the 4K bump.
Did you make the change before or after you just did this rewatch?
I actually watched Apocalypse Now about a year ago. And that's when I would start considering that change. So this happened before the 4K bump. But I was watching Apocalypse Now. I'm like this movie I love almost as much as 2001: A Space Odyssey. So it has to be number 2. And I can't say that I love Children of Men as much as that movie.
Okay. Nice.
You've got 2 pretty challenging. Are those same decade? 2001 and
a decade
Now?
of no 2001 is 68. Apocalypse Now is 79.
Sure. Those are 2 pretty challenging genre movies, though. In your 1 and 2. I don't have a problem with that, but it's just interesting.
They're journey movies. I mean, Children of Men, that's a challenging movie at number 3. And
I don't think Children of Men is challenging compared to 2001 and Apocalypse Now.
I mean, presentation wise, I don't think it's as challenging, but like if you're talking what happens to the character and the journey he goes on, like it goes to some pretty dark places in Children of Men.
Right. But I feel like Apocalypse Now and 2001 specifically are movies that have challenging tones to them.
Yeah.
And change in storytelling style over the course. Like Apocalypse Now feels like a war movie, and then it becomes something completely different in the end. Whereas Children of Men is what it is throughout it. I love Children of Men. I just feel like you could sit anybody down and they could watch Children of Men and get what they're going to get out of it. Whereas with 2001, you kind of have to watch that one a couple times.
Yeah.
To appreciate what the movie has to offer. And it has to offer a lot. It's just a lot to soak in the first time through for most people. Some people won't even give it the second time.
No, some people see that once and like, I'm done. No more.
Right.
I think for me, and this is why I like these movies, but also why I like noir movies so much,
Mhm.
is I like movies where you take someone and they're put into what seems like a straightforward situation. And as they keep going farther, things get more complicated and more crazy and more surreal.
Mhm.
And I think you can say that for 2001 Apocalypse Now, speak to that, but also a movie like The Big Sleep or Inherent Vice also kind of follow that same character trajectory.
Mhm. Just this week, I saw a news article where somebody dug up an old statement that Kubrick made where he explained what was going on at the end of 2001, which I thought was interesting.
What did he? I'm curious because I've read the book. I've read some of what he's had to say. I have my own theories. What does he say is going on?
I don't remember, but I will see if I can find it and send it to you.
Okay.
Send it to both of us.
Okay, will do. It's one of those things where they asked him and he always said like, I don't want to over explain it or I don't want to whatever. And then somebody dug up an interview, years after he was passed away where they're like, oh, this one time he actually did answer the question.
Is this the interview that he did for either like Japanese television or a Japanese newspaper?
Vaguely, I think that was the context. Yeah.
Okay, I think I've send that. Yeah, I
Maybe
might have read that, but
maybe
send it
you've
either
already
way
seen this.
because
Yeah.
there was this one time where it was like a non-English speaking reporter asked him, "So what's this movie about?" And he's like, "Fine, I'll tell you."
Right.
It's like what? Oh, this will only be in Japan. Great, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah.
before YouTube.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Mhm. Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode 500 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership.
We did it, guys.
We made it.
We made it.
The podcast, it made it. If you're a longtime listener, we definitely appreciate you listening over the years. If you're a day one listener, which Kyle was, and then he became a co-host on the podcast. But I know there's a couple other day one listeners that may still be listening. That's awesome. And we appreciate your loyalty. You could be listening to anything. And instead, you're listening to us. And we appreciate that. Don't forget, you can always send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. You could watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube. You could support us on Patreon. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. You could do any of those types of things. We'd appreciate any of them as well. And you could also follow us on social media at Cinereelists on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you could follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
And you can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shaban.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB.
Zach, Kyle, if you want to as well. You got anything to say about 500?
Yeah, I think it is so cool that we're at episode 500, and I'm not losing any steam. I have no desire to stop, so we're gonna keep going. But I just I can't even do the math on how much time I've spent talking to you about movies.
You talk to Kyle a lot about movies too. Do you think you've talked to me more?
I don't know. I would say it's close. Probably just because it's dedicated time talking to movies, whereas
Sure.
Kyle and I just
Yeah.
randomly.
It's like an hour plus a week scheduled time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I've certainly watched more movies with Kyle by
Mhm.
far.
yeah.
Sure.
And so if you count that and then talking about them during the movie or something, it's just hard to know, impossible to say,
Hard
very
to
close.
calculate.
But
That makes sense.
Zach, I would say that movies have always been a part of our friendship, but it wasn't until like the last decade that I think we really started, when we started getting into lists.
Yeah.
That's when we started talking about movies more
List movies.
directly.
yeah, so man, maybe we have, I don't know, it's hard to say.
It's
Sure.
tough.
Right.
But I would say I know James's movie taste better than absolutely anyone on earth, would be my guess.
You mean you know my movie taste better than anyone else could know it, or you know my movie taste better than you know anybody's movie taste?
Better than anyone else knows your movie taste.
That's probably true. probably true. Would you say the
Yeah.
same for Kyle?
Do I know Kyle's movie taste better than anyone?
Yeah.
I think that I would. Yeah.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Kyle?
I think so. I think I
Yeah.
could be a bit enigmatic with my movie taste.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's enigmatic for anyone.
That's
you know,
true.
like, yeah.
Sure.
Which one of you knows my movie taste more?
This should be the game.
Ooh. It could be James, just because you and James have had more direct movie conversations in the last several years.
Yeah. I mean, it literally structured movie conversations
Yeah.
for 6-7 years in a row. Not only structured, but like ranking. You know what I mean?
Right.
What do you like and what you don't like, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But- I'll still take number 2. I'm okay with that.
All right. Kyle's happy.
Kyle, you also have a really good memory.
I do?
Oh yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You forgot that already?
He didn't. Yeah, he didn't even remember. He had a good memory.
Well, it depends what. I have a really good long-term memory for useless knowledge, but something that someone asked me to do 5 minutes ago, good luck.
Awesome. Well, if you as a listener have something to say to us about 500, email us and we'll talk about it on the next episode, where we will be talking the latest James Bond movie, No Time to Die, potentially with a guest. We're still working that one out. So join us for that. Happy 500. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.